Brilliant. Welcome, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Welcome to the meeting of the Economy and Environment Overview Scrutiny Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. Item number 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence, and we've had apologies received from Councillor Gary Groves and Councillor Sharon Ritchie-Simmons, and she is being substituted by Councillor Dawn Usman. Thank you very much. Any other apologies? I think we've got everyone else here. Item 2 is disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting. As set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary interests?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a pecuniary interest, but I think because Shropshire Region Fire Authority will be mentioned at some point today, I just need to remind members that I am one of the representatives of Shropshire Council that sits on the Fire Authority, and at the moment I happen to be the chair. So I just want that out in the open.
Okay.
So that, it doesn't influence the way I think or vote or anything, but just so that everybody is well aware that I today I've got 2 hats on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting. To consider the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of September. Has anybody got any comments on those? Are we all happy with those? Can we have a proposer? Move. And a seconder? We've got hands over here. So David Minery and Brendan Mallon. Item 4, public questions. We have not received any public questions. Item 5, member questions. We've not received any member questions. So we're rattling through. We have a very long agenda today, so I'm hoping to keep to a tight time scale, but give everybody the opportunity to have their say and discuss items fully. So item 6 is a verbal update further to the members' briefing on the Veolia contract. So this committee organised a full members' briefing on the Veolia contract, which is leading into some work that we may want to consider looking at in the new year around green waste and food waste, and to receive a verbal update from officers. So if I hand over to Laura Tyler.
Thank you, Chair. I will be quick, I promise. I've seen the agenda. So just to give the committee update there's obviously a request of the committee group that we put on some waste contract overview sessions. So we did this on the 24th of September. We did an afternoon session as well as an evening session, and actually both sessions were very well attended with members' engagement, really, really good. The session covered where the service was in relation to the council structure. So under the changes that we implemented from April, the contract sits underneath commissioning, underneath myself. So that's hence why I'm here today. And we talked about the overview of what the PFI contract was, the structure of the contract and the waste treatment, as well as the waste collection elements to that. Some of the cost modelling, contract performance, how the contract is managed, which is really, really important actually. So at the moment, we've got monthly contracts, which give a comprehensive detail of the contractual performance and service development projects. There's obviously the daily side of things in terms of the customer interface and issues that are raised daily, both with Shropshire Council officers as well as Veolia. And then in addition, we have now put in some quarterly meetings with the provider, which both myself and Councillor David Lasker, as the portfolio holder, will attend moving forward. So we aim to ensure that we've got some strategic direction and development work as part of those quarterly meetings. We also talked about the social value of the contract and what that supports in terms of Shropshire residents and some of the opportunities really around some of those areas. So, for example, Veolia Orchards provide 55 fruit trees to 11 schools to promote healthy eating. They've also got a grant, and then they also do recycling discussions and talks as part of the crucial crew weeks with the schools as well. And as an outcome of those sessions, we also put on 2 opportunities to go and have a site visit as well. So just in terms of future changes, one of the things that we obviously have highlighted and probably want to bring back in the new year, Chair, and get agreement with the committee. So one of the largest changes, and it relates to the Environment Act 2021 and separation of waste regulations 2024, which came into effect in March 2025, and they aim to standardise recycling across England. And it includes the requirement that all households are required to have a weekly food waste collection by the 31st of March next year. So we discussed this with members, and we informed them currently at the local authority that we would not be live for next April. We've been very clear with DEFRA the position on that. We are not the only local authority in that position. But whilst we need to understand how we model and future new money and the funding implications that it potentially will place upon the local authority. So we're still awaiting announcement as part of the November budget, whether local authorities will receive revenue support as part of this change in legislation. So we are aware we've been given some capital investment as part of that already, and a small pot to do some project management around it. But in terms of ongoing revenue pressures, we are not aware of what that may be. So we propose that the item is discussed early in the new year once we understand all of these elements and the modelling and the potential funding and potential risks that may associate with the local authority implementing this, and look to set some specific timescales around its implementation, with the aim to get a decision to Cabinet for about April time. So we've been putting that into the forward plan. So that's just a very brief overview and update on that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I think from my point of view, I think it's important that we track back from a Cabinet decision so that we have enough time as a committee to look particularly at the weekly food waste collection and the proposals for that, so we can scrutinise that. I am conscious that as a committee we have a lot of things to look at, and we are having to rush certain aspects. So if we can track that back with a timeline, if that could be provided to us to ensure that we can get that in our work programme, that would be really useful. And likewise, if there are any proposed changes around the green waste collection, I think that would be useful for this committee to have a look at. It might be at the same time, or it could be something we would look at a later date. Again, a useful timeline on that before decisions being taken, that we can have a look, would be useful. Does any other members of the committee want to have any questions or comments following the members' briefing? I can say I attended the one session; it was very useful, and we look forward to looking at the proposals as soon as you have something concrete for us to scrutinise. Okay, thank you. We move on then. Item number 7. Got the catchy title: Levelling Up Fund Round 2, LUF 2, Project 2, Transforming Movement and Public Space in Shrewsbury. So this is an item we've been able to look at, and it's more commonly known as the station gyratory in Shrewsbury Town Centre. For us to, as a committee, to have an understanding and to gain some learning from the process in which this project has, from conception through to its delivery. And it is, no doubt members will have seen, it has raised a large number of concerns with members of the public and businesses in Shrewsbury Town Centre, and members as well. So this is an opportunity for members to ask some questions. I'm conscious that we perhaps won't be able to cover everything in this session. So we might look to facilitate maybe a task and finish, rapid task and finish in the very near future. I'm talking in sort of the space of a week or two, to really drill down into the details around this, to ask many of the more technical questions we might want to know. But this is an opportunity for members of this committee to look at this. We have a verbal update going to Cabinet in less than a week's time, next Wednesday, where we will be able to make some verbal recommendations of a way forward, and how we as a committee would like to take this forward to ensure that we get some meaningful outcomes from scrutinising it. So there's a paper that's been circulated very late in the day today, and I'm hoping all members of the committee have had at least a chance to have a look at that. I've had a look at it. Do we want to start with officers, just to give a sort of a brief overview as to where we're at, and then we'll open it up to some questions? and take it forward from there. So, Andy Wild, Service Director for Infrastructure, are you okay just to give us a very sort of brief overview of the situation?
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, just to set some sort of context in terms of the scheme itself. So this formed part of a levelling up bid that was submitted in 2023. It was part of 2 levelling up bids that Shropshire submitted at that particular time. The levelling up process was obviously led by senior officers who are no longer inside the organisation at this moment in time, similar to the circumstances with Laura around the waste contract. This project came as part of my portfolio as part of the senior management restructure that took place at the latter end of last calendar year. So at that point, this project was in effectively pre-construction design. We'd awarded a contract for this work, and the outcomes of that particular contract were very heavily predicated on that bid that was submitted in 2023. So the outcomes of that bid were very much linked to the funding arrangements, the outcome that had been agreed as part of that bid, and that was the outcome of the project to deliver on those deliverables. So in terms of the key objectives, obviously that was focused around very much public realm improvement, proactive active travel corridors, agendas, and the designs have been formulated very much linked to delivering the outcome of that bid submission. We've now moved through the construction phase. I've got Matt and Andy Morton with me today, just in terms of understanding more of the technical detail. But broadly, what we have delivered is very much around hitting the key objectives of that bid submission, delivering that within budget and on the timescale that we very much set as part of that bid. I'm very mindful of the fact that this has been contentious and there's been complications which no doubt will need to be explored, and as Councillor Potter, Chair, has referenced, there's a keenness to explore that in much more detail as part of a task and finish process that myself and my team will be very, very keen to support. Because I think there will be some valid learning and understanding that needs to come out of that in terms of how we move forward, and again, how we deliver projects of this type in the future. So hopefully that's a fairly concise summary, Chair, so quite happy to take any questions that come.
Thank you. I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I've sort of lived and breathed this for 2 weeks now, doing a lot of research into it. So I have a list of questions myself, but I think it'd be useful to let the committee go first with their questions, and then I'll pick up anything that perhaps hasn't been covered. So, Dawn, would you like to go first?
I'd like to raise a concern about the fact that I didn't actually receive this report until 11:38 this morning. I was in a meeting, and therefore I'm not now in a position to be able to ask any scrutiny questions based on said report. I think this is something that needs to be looked at in future, please.
Yes, members will know that there's been a bit frustration that the reports has been delayed and very late getting out to committee members, and I think I've spoken with the leader of the council as well. We need to look at the processes of which scrutiny reports, which are officers' reports, come to us in good time, so that we have the opportunity to read them, digest them, and prepare our questioning. So yes, as I said, I was very disappointed it wasn't with us in good time, and I'm hoping that we can look at that through the various channels of how this mechanism works to get reports to us will be addressed. So I will, as chair of this committee, certainly take that up.
Thank you.
If we go with Brendan, then David.
On the issue of information, I've asked by a member's inquiry to get detailed specifications of what was finally to be built. I suppose what I've only got at the moment with the original consultation drawings, which are very broad and give the fine detail you require. If that actually exists, can we see it? And the question would be, was there ever a fully defined and fully completed specification for that cycle lane? Because obviously been many changes in a very short period of time to how it's going to be implemented, how far up the hill it's going to go, if it's going to go up the hill at all. So it'd be interesting to see what we thought we were going to build in the first place.
So yeah, thank you for your question. So I think it's something that we can absolutely support in terms of technical specification, because at various stages, as I said, when the bid was originally submitted, this was very much concept. Okay, so there was a concept around key agendas. What then needed take place was a detailed design and more technical specifications around the actual moving that towards design. What was clear to me in my understanding of this is some of those risks at the early stages as part of that concept would need to have been mitigated and managed as we work through that process. So what you will have seen is some amendments to those designs due to engineering complications on site. So I think this is one of the things that needs to be understood in greater detail in terms of the reasons why some of those changes have had to come about and what that variance is in terms of the scheme that's actually been implemented on site compared to what was actually conceived at inception and what was designed. So I think that's something that myself and my team would be very happy to support with in terms of feeding into that task and finish process.
Can I just follow up on that? I understand there's issues over utilities, although I'm dealing with Severn Trent on another issue, and they've got ground penetrating radar and other methods for finding that, but we can look at your response to that, of course. But just the implementation of the bike lane up the Castle Gates, up the hill, that doesn't seem as if it was ever going to work, because it wasn't going to connect to anything. You couldn't get across the Meadow Place to rejoin the cycle network. So again, with your response,
yeah,
I'll be able to come back to this with. I'd like that to be looked at as well, because I think that's something that could have been anticipated more than perhaps the issues with utilities.
Yeah, I think in terms of sort of some of the issues you mentioned, sort of utilities, and again in that location, this is a very complex town centre location where we know there's a huge amount of utilities, which will ultimately, when you break down, cause complications. I think going back to the original concept of when the bid was submitted, I think if a more fully formed bid application would have then ensured that funding was secured to do significant ground investigations to ensure that as many of those risks were understood and were mitigated throughout the design process. I think my understanding is that we didn't have that level of detail at that stage, and that those risks would then continue through the process. Ground penetration radar work was undertaken, but that will only give you so much information when it comes to utilities, depths, locations, etc.
Thanks.
David?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I share colleagues' frustration at the late arrival of the documents. I understand that this happens from time to time. But first I saw it was when I arrived in the building at about 1:15. I was going to be saying a lot more, but now that you say we're going to have a task and finish, I think it's far more appropriate for some of the comments I was going to be making to be made there. But I will today just my fire authority hat on, place on record our concern, deep concern of the fire authority, of the impact that this has had on our ability to respond promptly to emergency. We've had at least one of our appliances totally embedded in traffic under the bridge by the station, unable to proceed while it was under blue lights. And there is video of this, which I think the deputy leader has been invited to come on for the fire authority HQ to meet the chief and myself and to have a look at this, because it is really, really serious. It is putting lives and property and businesses at risk. There needs to be a solution found. Otherwise, the location of our appliances is untenable. But that obviously will develop. I understand that there are some remedial temporary measures being suggested, which we will have a look at. We are very disappointed at the lack of consultation at the outset on this. But I believe the comments of the fire authority at that. I may want to come back a little bit later with other comments and questions. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I've had a number of correspondence from businesses in the town centre, from Shrewsbury Bid, local residents around consultation. So I think that is something as a committee that we can drill down into to fully understand what has happened, what hasn't happened, and to learn from that, particularly moving forward. And if there needs to be a reconsultation on any changes or potential changes that might come forward, this is something we really need to get on top of, and that's probably one of the recommendations that might come out of the work that we do. Is there anything you want to add to that, Andy, at this stage?
No, I don't think so, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Chris Naylor?
Excuse me, so I've got a slightly sore throat. Thank you, Chair. share the issues about the late arrival of the report, and obviously I think it's a 15-page report with a huge amount of detail in it, and needs quite a holistic grasp of the different issues. So I'm looking forward to studying it further and developing more questions. 2 points today. One is, as one of the stakeholders, Shrewsbury Town Council, I would have thought were a key partner in this, and I wasn't quite sure how much they had been involved in consultation and development of the scheme. The bid, great, I used to sit on a bid myself, but slightly different interests and concerns. So as and when we come back to look at this further, Shrewsbury Town Council and how they fitted in, I'd be interested to hear about. But I suppose more importantly, as a relatively new councillor, is the issue of the relationship with WSP, who, of course, are sort of crucial to the council in providing design support. They're referred to, I think, on point 7.3, WSP were commissioned as a strategic partnership to provide technical consultancy, etc. I won't read it all, but if it's they who then went ahead to design the whole scheme for us, and I may have got that wrong, then I would be keen to hear a bit more about the relationship there, the briefings that went on, what was in writing, what wasn't in writing, and how those issues of liabilities now to sort things out can be tackled. So it seems to me that is the tip of quite a big pyramid or iceberg, and I hope we can explore that further.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. Just to keep sort of tabs on everything, I note Andy Morton's got his hand up online. Is that in relation to David's comments around blue light services?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was indeed. I just wanted to touch base on that and give a little bit of clarification. Obviously, we have been engaging with the fire service throughout the design development and furthermore during the construction phases. I've been liaising with the operational leads at the fire service, and they are pulling together some information on the shouts that they have, any delays that have been incurred, and the potential reasons for that. I'm also looking to set up a wider emergency services meeting to involve the fire services, the ambulance and the police service, so we can understand collectively the impact that this project may or may not have had. I have also had some positive feedback from the operational lead at the fire service to say that since the signals have been optimized with the improved software, response times seem to have been improved, and negotiating the gyratory has got better since that date, which was early October. I think also I've personally witnessed that emergency services do actually use the cycleway to navigate past the traffic on Castle Foregate at the moment.
Thank you for that. I think I think we've probably got some information here that we will probably want to talk direct to the fire service when we meet again. So we can
just respond to that.
Yeah, if Councillor Minory wants to cover that.
I came into this meeting fresh from a conversation with the chief on this particular topic, and he is still seriously concerned and had not made more fuss about it. I'll use the word fuss prior to this, because obviously fire service and Shropshire Council are very close partners and didn't want to cause any concerns or embarrassment. But the fact remains that there have been instances where people and property have been put at risk, and he is, as I said, preparing to meet with people from Shropshire Council in an effort to correct. And I personally think using the cycleway is not a solution. It's all very well, but if I happen to be hard of hearing or I happen to be riding my bike with headphones on, I'm not going to hear an emergency vehicle coming up behind me. It is putting people at risk just as much It is just, from my point of view, totally unacceptable. But I will leave it at that today.
Well, I think it'd be sensible for us to perhaps invite a representative from the fire service as a witness when we have our task finished, so we can hear direct and we can establish some facts around that and see where we are with that particular issue. Now, just jumping back to Chris Naylor's points, I don't know if we have a portfolio holder here and you twin hatter.
So my name's John Wilson. I'm the portfolio holder for Transport and Ethnic Growth. So this scheme falls under my responsibility here. Also, since May, I'm the leader of Shrewsbury Town Council and also Shropshire Council's representative on the Big Town Plan Partnership. I think to Councillor Naylor's point on consultation with Town Council, that mostly should have taken place via the Big Town Plan Partnership. My understanding from conversations at the time, formally the Town Council, Councillor Modi, did raise concerns at the time, and I supported him in that at the time. I don't think those concerns were heard loudly enough to maybe make alteration at the time. I recall speaking to him when he first saw designs, and we raised particular issues at that time about bringing a Butterfoot bypass into Shrewsbury at that time, because there were concerns about them. So that's on the Town Council's role. I think beyond the initial conception, I think supporters had a letter from the chair of the Big Town Plan Partnership to say that the involvement of that grouping, where Shropshire Council works collectively with the bid and the Town Council, wasn't as good as it could have been. I think to Councillor Minnery's point, if I may, Chair, I think it's clear that there's a difference between consultation in a statutory form and proper engagement of stakeholders, and that's something that Shropshire Council needs to learn in this regard going forwards, and what it chooses to do from this point, because it's clear that there is a discrepancy. We are trying to resolve that going forwards, but there is something in the past that hasn't worked as well as it should have done. There was one more point. In terms of signal optimisation, to Andy's point, I think there was a period in October when they were first optimised where it did seem that the journey times improved. It does seem anecdotally, possibly in the last couple of weeks, that something has got worse again. So that is something that I hope officers will be looking at. I'm sure they will. There's something in optimisation and the phase of the lights in the last couple of weeks in particular that does seem to be of concern.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Just for the Senate committee are aware, I've had an email from Councillor Alan Mosey, who was the former leader of Shrewsbury Town Council this morning, raising his concerns, and I think he would like to have been here today to have an input as well. So I will follow up with him. Likewise, I noticed this morning I've received an email from the bid as well around some of the engagement they've been doing with businesses. And around traffic data that they might hold. So I think that would be worthwhile us exploring in more detail. Again, not for here and now. I don't think we have time to do that in this forum, but certainly going forward. And just before I move on to other members, just following up on Chris Naylor's second point, which was the WSP relationship. And of course, we haven't got a representative of WSP here today, and that's someone who we might want to hear from as a witness as well at the task page. I don't know if there's anything officers want to add into the WSP relationship.
I mean, in terms of
comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of the WSP contract, that was let in 2023. As an organisation, we have become what's kind of collectively termed as a lean client. So the premise around that is a lot of our technical expertise and consultancy and engineering support sits within WSP, and you have then a client officer. I think that reliance and that dependency on the technical provider is something that this organisation historically has endorsed in terms of that was the model that it wanted to work to. We've reduced headcount on the council side quite significantly as part of that. So I think broadly that technical advisor role, we would need to sort of look at that in detail, because I think that's one of the key considerations here in terms of the design. How that commission was engaged, because ultimately WSP are commissioned on the council's basis in terms of a task, a brief, outcomes, and how that relationship is managed And I think, a more detailed conversation around that, I think would be very beneficial, because I think that will help inform the organisation moving forward in terms of how that relationship proceeds.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I'm just going to jot down some notes around potential recommendations, and I think a review or looking at the strategic relationships we have with our partners would be very beneficial. And I think that's certainly something this committee could do. I know I've got Craig and Alan. Dawn, is this a point on that specifically? Can we do that, and then we'll come to yourselves?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do we have currently within the authority the level of technical expertise able to oversee and challenge this kind of contract, rather than the people that we are paying the money to sort of basically, it seems like almost marking their own homework? We need to have whoever is managing that contract has to have the capability to understand what's being put in front of them and challenge that as at a peer level. Really, do we have that at the moment or not?
I mean, there's a number of elements, I guess, to that. I mean, the first element is, I think coming back to my original point around the original bid that was submitted, that bid framed really the outcomes that were needed here in terms of the deliverables on site and the deliverables of that scheme linked to the funding that was given, and those very specific outcomes that had to be achieved to ensure that funding provider was satisfied that the money had been used appropriately. That also locked in budget, timeline, and a range of other things. At the point we engaged WSP, and again, Matt, Andy, feel free to kind of pitch in at any point here, in terms of that commission would have been very much based on delivering those outcomes. So in terms of technical expertise, that is where our technical expertise and our professional provider sits. We've got client officers on our side who oversee those commissions and review the work that is undertaken. Now, as I've alluded to, we have over a period of time, and this has been a decision by this organisation historically, to shrink the client capability down, because that's the model that the organisation was working to: lean client, bigger professional services provider. Now, I think, there's a decision for the administration about how it sees that going forward in terms of the way that it wants to work. And that will be something that I think the outcomes of the task and finish report will inform.
Brilliant, thank you. Craig?
Oh, that's on there.
Yeah, very well.
Thank you. I think really supported the task and finish group. I think what would be really key to hear from is how this was designed to be included within the Shrewsbury Move strategy. Things like that. Ultimately, Shrewsbury is a medieval kind of town, and the streets just can't cope with the volume of traffic. I think we can see that now. I think two other points is Councillor Wilson mentioned probably consultees haven't really been listened to as widely as possible. I think I'd like to extend that to officers. How do we internally hear if there's any concerns of officers around kind of project? And then probably lastly is, for similar funding in the future, it is how does the council prepare those bids so they're oven ready for when they come up, so they aren't specific and we can have them ready to go.
Yeah, I think they're very useful points. I think Shrewsbury Moves strategy, I think we need to get a grasp of that, as to, it's a bit of the chicken and the egg situation. You have grant money to do X and Y, but you haven't done A and B first. So it's trying to understand that and how we manage that as an organisation, particularly if external funding is coming in and it appears that is the way forward for local authorities around these things, external funding coming in. So I think that's certainly something we can look at. Is there anything you need to add on there, Andy?
Not specifically, Chair.
Yeah. We'll move on to Alan.
I'm just wondering how agile we can be on the traffic light sequencing, because I do think there's an opportunity to ease traffic flow a little bit on Castle Foregate still, because traffic turning left from Smithfield Road into Chester Street, at the moment, there's two sequences where that is on green. Yeah. And on one of those, nobody else is moving. So one of the times when it's on green, traffic can also turn right from Chester Street onto Smithfield Road. But then there's quite a long session of about a minute where it's on green from Smithfield Road turning into left into Chester Street where nothing else is happening. And there's an opportunity to have traffic flowing from Castle Foregate on Smithfield Road at that point and easing a bit of a backlog. So I'm just wondering how easy it would be to have another look at that and change it.
Thank you.
Is that something we can do in the short? Andy Morton's got his hand up. Is that perhaps?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, that is certainly something that we can look at. And to pick up on the previous point about the signal phasing and sequencing, in the last couple of weeks, we have recently had an issue with a glitch within the software system. That became evident, I believe, on last Sunday. Engineers visited site on Monday afternoon and were able to clear one of those bugs, for want of a better description. And they were again out there yesterday. I saw them there myself. Looking at the other, I'm due to get a response back from them this afternoon as to the work that they've undertaken and what the cause of that problem was.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And hopefully if we can have some information on that, we can feed that back into the task of finish as to any potential improvements. I think those of us that drive through Smithfield Road and up St Michael Street or Ellesmere Road are becoming quite familiar when the traffic lights seem to work better than other times. So, and I'm sure the public are very much aware of that themselves. So I've got Heather, but Brendan, is yours related to anything we've just been discussing specifically here before I bring Heather in?
It goes back to Rob's comments, but don't let me respond to that. Once we're downstream of this process, resolve these issues with January, I would suggest we need to have a wider review of the big town plan overall, because clearly the first element of it hasn't gone as well as it should have. We need lessons learned from that to certainly review the basic assumptions for the rest of the flow. I mean, one I would add there is the suspension of the North West Relief Road, which seems to be the primary predicates for having less traffic wanting to go through town in the first place. If that's not either reinstated, said it should be, or an alternative means of reducing that flow by getting the flow around the town by some other means, then I think that needs serious review. That could be another task of finish group.
Yeah, I think we have on our agenda the work programme a little bit later on, and I personally certainly want to look at Shrewsbury Town Centre redevelopment, Riverside, particularly to learn from this process around the gyratory. But also, I think things have changed. North West Relief Road, around the movement strategy, funding, and things like that. So I think that would be something sensible for this committee to look at, probably as an aside from this specific issue, although connected, but yeah, certainly something we should look at. Is Rob, yeah,
just direct to Councillor Mallon's point. I think it's a good point to make. I think when the bid for Luff 2 went in, it made a big play, for want of a better word, of the big town plan, and at that point, if I'm remembering the calendar correctly, the emerging movement strategy wasn't actually in place at that time. I think it's worth bearing in mind that the big town plan came out of a very large public consultation exercise that with no plans. So they said to the public, what do you want for the future? I think my impression of this particular project, in terms of relationship to the big town plan, the feeling as has been expressed by the chair of the big town plan partnership, that this project didn't really align to that in the way it should. I think it could be seen that way. I don't think this was really, in essence, a big town plan or movement strategy project, because I think if you look at it, part of what has been delivered would potentially have to be removed if the movement strategy were to be delivered. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I remember Councillor Nellens at the time saying that there were projects A to Z, and the council brought the money for projects A and G first. I would challenge that and wonder why we didn't bid for the money for A and B first. I'd also challenge that I don't think the G he was referring to was really part of that project. So I think I can see why they get conflated. I don't really see this data directory as part of the movement strategy of the big town plan. I can see why it would be seen that way. I think that connection has been broken along the line.
I think that's quite a valid point. There is a disconnect, I think, between sort of high level concept and actually bringing it forward for delivery with the constraints around funding. And I think that is something that needs to be managed probably a little bit more careful. And that's what one of my concerns is around the Riverside project, is that we have a real strong grip on that. So, yeah.
Can I just respond to the response very quickly?
Response, yes, and then I'll bring that in, and then I promise.
Sorry, everybody. I would just say that I agree with your point, looking at the original concept that doesn't really fit with it. However, overall, the big town plan is about very radical changes to traffic flow and reductions of private vehicle flow through the town. And it does have an interaction with the Northwest Relief Road suspension. So I still think, on that basis alone, it still needs a good look at. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Very quickly, Chair, I think the movement strategy itself was written with and without the Northwest Relief Road included. That was a key part of how it was developed. I think one of the important things about the big town plan gets lost in discussion is that one of the primary drivers of it is for public transport and emergency vehicle access through town. I think this particular project has shown how important that is. So if we're going to ensure that buses in particular and emergency vehicles do have that freer access, we do have to take some steps towards that.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me if I cough. I was just going to link a couple of points there. For the purposes of understanding of the committee and the council, we've spoken about the big town plan and various discrete projects that are tumbling out of that. We've also mentioned a sort of opportunistic approach that the council has had with success in terms of funding applications. It's just to make members aware that the creation of the local transport plan, which is the overarching strategy, I know Councillor Wilson's deeply embedded in that work. I'm more than happy to play that into the future scrutiny activity, because I think that gives a number of hooks and checks and balances against where the council's priorities sit. It also aligns projects, aligns projects in the future with corporate ambition, which can keep focus on what we pursue, why we pursue it, and actually ensuring that the outputs are consistent with the council's ambition. So if it's a policy overarching piece that we can play in, might even raise the local transport plan at the moment. I know a lot of members have been involved in that preemptively with consultation. I can keep members abreast of that process because I think it'd be very useful to use as a lens through which to look at the big town plan and other major projects.
Brilliant. So that's LTP4.
LTP4, local transport,
which I know Rob has been very animated on in the past. Does that fall under your portfolio now?
Yes. Yeah. My portfolio gets.
So that's something perhaps we need to look at this as an overarching.
So just for the committee, if I may, LTP4, Matt will remind me if I'm wrong, was paused about 12 months ago. Correct. Roughly. Because the government said it was going to bring forward new guidance about 2 years ago, spanning the previous government and the current one. That new guidance is still not yet being produced by the government. Our existing local transport plan, LTP3, expires next year. And in fact, I believe it was never actually formally adopted. It's been used, but it was never actually formally adopted. So there has been a lack of strategy in this space for some time. So one of the things I've asked us to do is to restart work on LTP4, because without a coherent local transport plan, we are in the world of these speculative applications towards projects which may or may not join together.
Okay, thank you. Heather, sorry for keeping you waiting.
Right, there are a number of things in this. Actually, I really hope that you, as a task and finish and as a group, manage to flesh out. I really want to see the value of the risks put on all of this as it went through, because it's all very well putting in words a risk, but if you have no idea how serious that risk is, it's very difficult to evaluate any sort of decision. The timelines are also very, very important. I might say that I have never known the traffic as bad as I have seen it on Monday and Tuesday this week. it was shockingly bad. And even when the works were going on and the new traffic signals were not in place, the traffic was far worse than I'd ever seen. So that was actually Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday was slightly better because I came in later. But even at early in the morning coming in, it was horrendous. And a number of us were late for meetings because of that. And literally, I was leaving. It was taking me an hour and 10 minutes to do a 40 to 45-minute trip into the town centre, into Guildhall. So if you were going anywhere further, it was much worse. So if the engineers came out to deal with it on Monday, heaven knows what happened on Tuesday. I'm really not very impressed with any of that. I'm also really pleased you're going to be looking at partners' work, because I think that is very important. And as you know, as an administration, we have been very, very concerned about our contract control over the last several years. We are putting things in place to make sure exactly that now happens in the future. And there is a clear line of accountability to all of that. So if you can get those things fleshed out, so it's a really useful piece of work for us to apply to things in the future, that would be very, very valuable. There are a number of other things that I won't go into at the moment, but I do think we should start monitoring the traffic in the town centre now, so we have accurate information about what is going on, because you obviously have no idea what happened on Tuesday when things go wrong. And if we've got systems of lights, and I have experienced lights being green in both directions and cars meeting in the middle, which I have raised on several occasions, one, it's dangerous, two, it causes chaos, and three, I really want a strong partnership set up between us and Transport for Wales over the car park, because on Friday I had residents in Stiperstones telling me they couldn't get out of the car park because of the traffic, because a very, very busy train had come in. And Transport for Wales are not dealing with the parking in front of the station well. I've done all of this with Andy about 6 weeks and 2 months ago because I experienced it. The lady in question who was particularly complaining to me in Stiperstone, so this is not a town centre thing, this is people using the railway, said that there was a lady had to get out of her car and direct the traffic so that they could get out of the car park. Transport for Wales should not be filling up all the spaces for people to wait for people to get off the train with Network Rail vehicles, with bollards in front of them now, that it's got worse than it was before, and police vehicles. So getting in and out of that is just making the whole thing a lot worse. So there's a whole load of partnership working that needs to be looked at around all of that. More than anything else, this is now about start to finish, how we work out what's going to happen, the timelines, the risks, and we will need to look at what happened around the North West Relief Road as well, because we have similar issues with that. And I do not want to be put in a position where I'm actually having to say to residents, well, if you win the lottery, you might have the North West Relief Road because we can't afford it. And I have said that. I didn't let anyone say when I said it.
And it doesn't ring a bell. But I might buy a ticket. Thanks for that, Heather. I think we've jotted those down. I think there's certainly things we'll take on board from when we're looking at this. The one thing I just wanted to pick up here, and I think it's one of the recommendations on the report, is around safety. And it hasn't been mentioned yet. It's called a floating bus stop. Is that what we call it? I think based on reports from the press and a lot of correspondence I've had, I think it is one of the recommendations of the report. I think we'll be adding to the recommendations is around a safety review. In fact, we will try and look to conduct that as soon as possible. You've obviously raised issues around the lights, but also I think particularly with the bus stop situation and the width and length and the construction of that, I think it's useful to bottom out that. And I think that's one of the things we will be asking for as a committee, or it's certainly one of the things I've got on my list as long as the committee agree, around safety review. So, yeah, interesting point around Transport for Wales. And how we build into that engagement. And I suppose it's a wider picture around the connectivity of the whole, buses, trains, particularly residents, and again, it links in with the movement strategy, residents from the west of, which is both Heather and I's sort of area, moving through to the station and things like that is something we need to perhaps have an eye on. So yeah, I'll take all those on board. Chris Naylor.
Thanks, Chair. That's all very helpful. And I think just to remind ourselves, this is quite a lot of public money. It's quite a lot of staff time. It's quite a lot of member time. And of course, it's quite a lot of time for all those people stuck in queues around the station. And we all want to be showing we're doing our best on that. And as a scrutiny committee, trying to, as people have said, look at points which we can learn from. 2 points which I don't think have come up and might be of interest. One is how the procurement side worked on this. And I'm not sure if that was mentioned in the report or not. And particularly for me, I suppose the question is, as one goes to the procurement stage, what detail there was in a contract and whether there was any cabinet member oversight on that. Because I think, a lot of us as members feel, we might have been able to check things through and give different points of view on things. And indeed, we've got that public responsibility in terms of using money. So I think it would be very interesting if we could, in the task and finish, to have a bit of a look at what the cabinet member oversight was, and indeed how it related to that final contract in the procurement process. I mean, I guess there may have been some flexibility in that contract, as one often needs, because you don't quite know what you're going to get until you get there. But what were the political judgments about that? How was the cabinet member involved on that?
Thanks, Chris. Just before Andy comes in, I spent a little time tracking back the timeline on this, and it's my understanding the cabinet members or the members that were responsible for this are no longer members of the council, as are many of some of the senior officers. So in terms of them again being able to put forward their representations is going to be difficult unless they want to come. We can invite them as a witness to a task and finish, but obviously we can't compel them to attend. But obviously, we have a cabinet member here now. Do you want to?
I can answer for myself since.
Yeah, I think that would be
the 22nd of May when we officially took office at full council. But actually on the 9th of May, I met with Andy Weil, Andy Morton, I think Matt as well. I can't check in my notes, so I've missed it. But specifically to talk about the station directory and where it was at and where it remained at that time. I think it's fair to say at that time that the project was effectively baked in terms of hard infrastructure. So the parts under the station bridge were already constructed. That wasn't something that could be reversed. And I think the thing we came down to was the thing that could be adjusted was the section from the station up towards Quite Hill, the up the hill section. But anyone listening who doesn't quite understand where I'm referring to, I think it was at that time we started to discuss what were the options there. And the options effectively were continue to run a cycle lane the whole way up the hill in the bus lane. That would have meant that buses were no longer able to bypass traffic. So as we talked about earlier in terms of prioritising bus travel, that would actually put buses into more traffic. We could have removed that cycle lane all the way back down to the station, so it had no cycle infrastructure the other side up the hill. That would have effectively made what was constructed redundant, because it wouldn't have been accessible to make that journey northwards, because there would be no way to get into that cycle. And you would also have lights for the cycle phase, which would have become completely redundant too. So where we've landed with is a small section that gets you towards Meadow Place, which I can't remember who mentioned it. I think it was Councillor Mallon mentioned it. That at least means there is a possibility to connect over to what's existing down Meadow Place and onto Raven Meadows. It is a compromise. I think we had to look at what was possible within the funding, within the constraints of what had been agreed with DULUC, I think it was at the time, and now MXCLG, and what options we did have without putting the council into further financial distress, which obviously we know is a huge problem right now. So that's where I've been as a kind of member. I think the additional thing is what the design did is it removed the ability for park and ride buses from Oxon and from Meal to drop off at stations. So that was something that was lost in the designs. And what we've been working to do is to find ways that we can actually get those buses back to station. I've got residents in Cotswold in my own local area who want to be able to use that to get to the station, haven't been able to. So we've been looking at options whereby a park and ride bus could use cross street and turn like that requires some swept parking buses, and Andy may know the details on it more. But there's lots of mitigating measures we've been trying to make the best of where it was on the 1st of May this year.
I've got Brendan and Chris. Chris, are you coming back on the point you made? And then Brendan, I presume you're on a similar tack, yeah?
Okay, Chris says.
Yeah, Chris.
Shall I just make a quick comment, I suppose? Two things. One is that timeline. Seems to me that's really very interesting and important to look at, to work out what happened where. And secondly, to say Cabinet members' response to us now is, I think, very helpful and from my point of view, reflects the kind of interaction which we should be having as members, as Cabinet members with staff. And part of my concern is that there wasn't that kind of interaction going on before, and there wasn't that oversight in terms of spending public money, which from the Cabinet member right now, I feel confident that is about this last phase. So that's something to pick up on task finish. Not a further question.
Yeah.
Brendan? And just to follow on from Councillor Wilson again, I'm not picking on you. Just to make the point that up until about 2011, there was actually a third stretch of lane by the station that was purpose-built for buses to pull in, leaving the other two free. That was then converted into a wider footpath that became a combined foot and cycle path, which up until recently was the existing cycle access to the bottom of Castle Gates. And I would argue what's been implemented, we talk about guidelines about the depth of the floating bus stop, but also the cycle lane itself, I don't believe is safe for cyclists. It might be okay to get a bicycle past another bicycle, but what about when a recumbent or a trike or one of the site delivery trucks starts getting up there? You know, it just doesn't seem fit for purpose. At least a cyclist on the shared footpath knows to go slow because we're going to integrate with pedestrians. I just believe maybe 14 years ago, we'd already achieved the correct balance between the different road uses between bus, private vehicle and cyclist.
Thanks for that. And I think that's one of the points I got here is around the engagement with people like Active Travel England, Movement, and to understand at what point the consultation happened, the correct information was, what input into the design. So it's one of the points I have made. So I think we can certainly look at that to take that forward, because I think, from my understanding, is that consultation with people like Active Travel England happened quite late in the day. So it's just to fully understand that picture, and sometimes improvements, changes, and change sake isn't always the best outcomes. I think we've. I haven't got any more people indicated they want to speak on this. So, having thought about this and the way in which we,
I was just going to say thank you to the committee for considering this. I know we've done it at a rapid time scale, but I think it's obviously a matter of huge public interest and member interest. So, just wanted to thank the committee for taking this so quickly and bringing forward recommendations. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think we want to get something really meaningful out of this. There's no point just sitting here and talking about it. So, then thinking about this, how we can do that, how we can achieve that. There's two recommendations on the paper, which, if I can just pull that up. One is that the Economy Environment Scrutiny Committee consider this report and identify specific areas to focus that may want to explore in more detail, the outcomes of which will be included in the future report. So quite happy to take that as a recommendation, but I think our recommendation would be that we would establish a rapid task and finish to take place before the end of November, enabling us to then report back to Cabinet in December with something meaningful, with some firm recommendations to go forward. That is a very tight timeline, but I'm also very conscious that the members of the public and businesses are very interested in this, and I think it's our duty to tackle this and take a grip of it as best we can. So that would be my sort of first, accept the recommendation, but say that enable us to do that, we will set up a rapid task and finish. That will mean that we will put out a call for members, and there won't be a massive amount of time for you to say you want to be part of it. we're going to have to crack on with it, which will make a change very quickly so we can actually get on with the job. Number two, the recommendation is, I think there needs to be a change to the wording of this. And it's, instead of says delegates, it should be changed to recommends that the service director of infrastructure, in consultation with the
So just that.
yeah, so instead of take away delegates, it recommends that the service director for infrastructure, in consultation with a cabinet member for transport and economic growth, to consider the commissioning of an independent safety audit review of the current proposal to provide assurance that associated risks such as congestion and emergency access are robustly addressed. So accept the recommendation, but instead of delegates, it's recommends. If that's okay, that's a technical matter. We just have to make sure we get right in our, or we don't have delegatory powers. Thirdly, in terms of recommendations, I think we need to ask that Cabinet reviews the council's strategic partnerships. And I think that is something that we can ask Cabinet to do. And I think the work in which we undertake during our taxing finish will inform that process. So it will be a bit of a two-way with scrutiny conversation with the relevant portfolio holders and Cabinet. And finally, a fourth recommendation is I need someone who is probably more eloquent than me to recognise that there is learning taken away from this, and that we make sure these sort of things don't happen again. So if I could perhaps leave that to word that appropriately. Are we happy as a committee that those are the recommendations that we will further update Cabinet with on Wednesday of next week and take forward? Does anyone want to make any amendments to those four recommendations, or any other suggestions? Anyone want to add anything or take anything away? David?
If that's the recommendations, Chair, I'm happy to second.
Okay, Heather, do you want to say anything before we?
Yeah, could I just say that when you come up with those, hopefully they can then be applied to other schemes that are ongoing now to make sure that actually they have the right governance around them?
Yeah, so I think that's probably what I'm trying to say in the fourth recommendation. I don't know how to word it. Is, yeah, that learning and making sure this doesn't happen again.
But it's not. But it's actually to schemes that are running now.
So, okay, implemented within existing schemes. I'll leave you to finalise that, and we'll share those recommendations. So are we all in favour of those four recommendations? Yeah, I think that's unanimous from the committee, so we'll take that and we'll present that next Wednesday. And you members across it's open to all will get a call to be members of the Task and Finish, and we will have to push on with that probably around about the 24th of this month, something like that, to ensure that we can get reports back to Cabinet in time for December. Brilliant. Thank you very much, officers and portfolio holders, for helping us tackle that. And I think we've got a direction moving forward, if nothing else, at this stage. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. If anyone would like to leave after that item, please feel free to, but we're moving straight on to item 8, which is Sports Village Development. We've got a number of slides. You just bear with us a minute. We're just trying to share the relevant slides onto the screen.
It leads Tom.
Yeah, can I just quickly say, while you're waiting for that,
Yeah.
can I just put on record my displeasure at a report of this length being circulated so late? It's 256 pages in all. Not been possible to read it all. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think, again, I think the three main written reports for this committee were all circulated this week. And that is something I have challenged. And as I've said earlier, as with the levelling up reports coming out today, we certainly need reports in a more timely fashion so that we are able to digest it. And I think that's been heard loud and clear. And I will take that forward to follow up to try and ensure that doesn't happen in the future. So, yeah. Right. We've got the slides on the screen. I think Councillor James Owen is introducing it, and then we've got officers who will take us through a brief presentation.
Sure, brief.
So, James.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to introduce this report that proposes a significant step forward for the wellbeing and future of our community through transformation of the sports village. This ambitious project is designed to deliver a modern, accessible and sustainable leisure facility that will serve residents from across Shropshire for decades to come. The transformation of the sports village is a response to the clear needs identified in our communities and the challenges we face with ageing infrastructure across the county. This proposal offers a bold solution to ensure continuity and enhancement of swimming and fitness provision in central Shropshire. Our plans include the creation of a major extension to the existing sports village, with key features being a competition standard 25-metre 8-lane pool, a studio teaching pool with children's splash play area, and competition seating. We are also proposing a 130-station fitness suite, new gym and dance studios, a wellness and toning centre for those with mobility needs, and a large children's play area and cycle spin studio. Importantly, the new facilities are designed to be fully accessible for all users, including those with disabilities and families, with improved changing areas, a changing places facility and a new reception space. Sustainability is the heart of this project. The new facility will be all electric, powered by photovoltaic cells and air source heat pumps, and designed to BREEAM excellent standards, helping us progress towards our net zero carbon target. We're also exploring further decarbonisation through solar panels with the car parks and the potential for a local heat network, projects that could run in parallel with the main development subject to funding availability. This proposal is the culmination of extensive consultation with 1,367 responses received from residents, including children and young people. The feedback was positive, with most respondents expressing satisfaction and enthusiasm for the new facilities, especially the health and fitness suites, studios, and dedicated spaces for families and people with additional needs. The concerns raised, such as accessibility, transport, and the future of the quarry pool, have been carefully considered in shaping the final plans and possible future options. Financially, the estimated total project cost is 29.1 million, with a combination of SEL or community infrastructure levy, the capital receipts and borrowing to fund the scheme. The project is a capital strategy priority, and if approved, the new facility could be open to the public by the end of 2027. By investing in Sundawn, we are targeting areas of greatest social need, as 30% of local households are from deprived backgrounds, and this facility will help address health inequalities and increase opportunities for all. I invite the committee to comment on these proposals and to support the recommendation to take this transformative project forward to Cabinet and full council for approval. And I'll now hand it over to Peter, who will take through the slides and then move on to questions. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Yes, just to build on what Councillor Owen has sort of explained, we have a programme in Shropshire that's chaired by Nora, our commissioning director. We've been looking at trying to provide high quality public leisure facilities which meet the health and fitness needs of all Shropshire residents. Within the last year, we've seen the opening of the Whitchurch Pool and Fitness Centre, which is very much a model of what we're proposing here in the centre of Shropshire in Shrewsbury. That opened in March and has exceeded our expectations in terms of new visitors and as well as accessibility facilities, with many people with special needs making use of the enhanced facilities we've provided there. We're already underway with a project to improve swimming and fitness
in the south west of the county, with the Bishop's Castle Leisure Centre being decarbonised and a repair programme being implemented to improve accessibility to the pool, which is also leaking and in need of investment. And there's also significant work being planned at the moment to deal with Market Drayton Pool, which has sprung a significant leak. And there's about £250,000 of investment having to be put into that in order to keep the show on the road at Market Drayton. So what we're looking at currently is two initiatives which have been in the design stage, one of which you'll be discussing later today under the private agenda. But in terms of this facility, we're looking to transform the current sports village to make it more usable and provide a wider range of facilities, as Councillor Owen has identified. And what we're looking to do is to take this proposal forward to both Cabinet and full council in the near future, with a decision on whether or not we should proceed to the build stage. Next slide, please. So one of the things that locating the facilities in the sports village is that it provides us with the opportunity to invest in the major sports and fitness centre for the county in one of the areas of most deprivation. If you look at the table and the graph and the presentation below, you can see that the sports village is surrounded by 4 of the 5 most deprived wards in the county, and provides us with an opportunity to enhance the economy and social well-being of those particular areas of the county. 30% of the households within a 15-minute walk of the sports village are classified as deprived. However, having said that, the sports village also provides an opportunity for accessibility in that 217,000 people within Shropshire live within a 20-minute travel time to the sports village. So it also provides accessibility to a large proportion, 2/3 of the population. Next slide. In terms of where this fits in the wider programme for leisure facilities, you can see here we've talked about the Whitchurch investment, which is an excellent public facility. We're looking to improve facilities in Bishop's Castle. We've also got relatively good facilities in Ludlow and in Oswestry. Oswestry was the last major swimming pool that the county developed, and that was about 12 years ago. It still remains a good facility. But through the centre, you can see there, through the centre of the county, our current facilities at the quarry are generally considered to be in a poor condition. So time is pressing if we are to develop new public and fitness facilities serving central Shropshire. As Councillor Owen pointed out, public facilities provide residents an opportunity, provide them with opportunities for healthy lifestyle choices that can improve outcomes for children, families and an ageing population, which are consistent with the council's key priorities. Swimming pools are important in that primary schools are required in a national curriculum to ensure that all children should be able to swim at least 25 metres and tread water before they leave primary school. And therefore all infant schools and primary schools are looking for good quality and accessible swimming facilities to meet this objective. The compound effects of inflation means that the business case for these facilities is challenging. And over the last few years, the costs of building new facilities has increased significantly and continues to do so, and will only become more challenging in the future unless a decision is made going forward. Councillor has explained the main features that are being provided. This is not just about swimming. It will provide us with an opportunity to run county level swimming competitions through the 25 metres and 6 centimetres, because there'll be timing pads, space for those. And that will be the first time we've been able to run the county competitions, which are currently held outside of the county. We're also looking to provide facilities for a whole range of fitness activities, and the use of movable floors, which we've implemented in Whitchurch, gives us an opportunity to adapt the pool so it can be used for all types of use, whether that be aqua aerobics, water babies, or as you see here, we're also looking for a children's splash area for young families. Both pools will have easy access steps, and that will ensure that people are able to get in and out of the pool with the greatest of safety and ease. And also, we'll both be providing pool pods, which are waterproof lifts that allow wheelchair users to access both pools. And that feature at Whitchurch has been very popular with wheelchair users, and was a feature that was very popular with wheelchair users in the public consultation. There'll be a new changing village. We're also looking to enhance the range of fitness activities that are available in the location. Swimming pools are expensive to run and operate, and other fitness opportunities also give us are designed to attract more revenue and a whole range of users. So cycle spin is very popular at the moment, and particularly we're looking to enhance those facilities. But also for the ageing population, we're proposing to put in a wellness toning studio. This is a small gym which is private and allows people who perhaps aren't confident or physically able to take advantage of a typical fitness gym to exercise using motorised power assisted fitness machines. We're also looking to put into fitness studios, dance studios, which can be used for multiple activities, whether that be for special groups. So we're looking for some sensory stimulation. That's a common feature used with people in adult social care. And that's something which could be very popular, as well as a dance studio for things such as aerobics and dance facilities, Pilates, etc. The facility will have a changing places facility, which is especially an enhanced disabled changing toilet facility, so that people with carers can change with ease and make use of the facilities. We're looking to retain and enhance the existing cafe, enhance playing facilities for local children, and a 130 station gym, together with the environmental features that Councillor Owen outlined. Next slide. I think it's a repeat of the next slide.
Sorry.
Yes, no. Public consultation was held in May of last year. It was an 8-week consultation with 137 respondents. We also did a youth version, which attracted over 80 respondents. And we also had, in terms of parish councils, 0.8% of the respondents were parish councils. That's about 9 councils did respond to the features. So we have engaged with the local communities across the different organisations. And what we did see in the figure top right there is that the new facilities that we're proposing did appear to be the most popular in terms of the offerings at the Sports Village, which suggests that we've got the balance right. There were some concerns raised about accessibility, parking, and the potential future of the quarry, which we'll have to talk about later. Next slide. Overall, though, in terms of satisfaction, regarding the swimming provision, 73% of respondents to the survey said that they were satisfied to an extent with the proposals. And in the youth survey, 89% of youth respondents said they were very satisfied or satisfied with the swimming proposals. And a similar story for the overall proposal, with 90% of the youth respondents saying they were satisfied, very satisfied, and 70% responding in the main survey. Albeit it's important to point out that 21% of respondents were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with what we're proposing as well. So not universally accepted, but the majority were satisfied. Next slide, please. These are the architectural drawings. We're in the final stages now of the designs. At the council meeting of the 26th of September in 24, a design budget was approved, and we proposed that we would appoint a design and build consortium in order to undertake the work, and that went out to a tendering exercise using Denbighshire Council's UK Leisure Framework under the supervision of a project board, which includes representatives from across the council for assurance purposes. Roberts Limbrick's architects were appointed under the guidance of Pelican Construction, and these are the Robert Limbrick's designs. Quite a lot of work has gone into trying to integrate the new building with the existing building. One of the briefs that we had from the planning officers in the authority was that they wanted an improvement in the overall aspect and view of the sports village, which, dare I say, is quite utilitarian and will provide a degree of civic enhancement to the local community. You can see there the gymnasium over an arcade with a new entrance hall and the views from different points from Sunderland Road and from the car park. Okay. And then these are just some renderings from the architects of what the visuals might look like. You can see here in the top left, the dance studio, the gym in the centre, and an illustration of the children's splash area that we're proposing. And then in the bottom left, you've got the learner pool or studio pool, which will have the accessible steps and pool pod. and a parental viewing area with the splash area to the side as well. And that's enclosed so that it can be segregated off if there are other activities going on, and also that the heating can be increased so it can be used for more a variety of users if it needs to be used for aqua aerobics or babies and toddlers. On the bottom right, you can see the competition size pool. The pool will have diving blocks at the far end, and sufficient, there's an appendix which shows the standards that are required for an amateur swimming association competition venue, and we've been designed to meet those requirements with suitable spectator and parking for competition needs. Next slide, please. So in terms of social value, Sport England have developed a computer model that looks at the facilities and how that might improve the well-being of the local community. And so indicatively, what the Sport England assessment suggests is that we could attract up to 15,000 regular participants to the new enhanced sports village, and this would provide a social value of reducing the cost impact on health and social services in the community by up to £1.1 million per annum, as well as community development, individual development, and improving the physical and mental health of users, with an overall social value of about 2.1 million to the local community per annum. Okay, next slide. In terms of the cost, the committee on the council on the 26th of September approved a budget of £2.25 million to complete the design stages and planning permission and all the detailed surveys necessary to put a facility of this complexity together. I am forecasting that we'll come in under budget on that activity. It's coming to a close now. I have about 6 more weeks of bills to pay. I'm expecting us to come in just over £2 million, and so under budget from that. Our current estimates for the completion of the build stage, again, these are being finalised because our contractor Pelican is going out to tender. Will be over 50 different subcontractors working together on the Pelican if this is approved, but we estimate that will be an additional £27.1 million. The original business case that went to council last year anticipated and modelled if we had that it would be affordable with a balance of 80% borrowing and 20% come other sources. I should point out, I'm sure Mr. Watt would concur, that competition for capital receipts and SIL budgets is very challenging at the moment. So we're going to continue to look at a range of options for how that funding of other activities could be chosen. At the moment, there are no Sport England grants available outside of specified sort of urban areas within the UK. We are hoping that that could change within the next year, although we haven't got any firm indication of that. But certainly if Sport England do change its policy and open the doors, we have an open ready project here which could attract funding. But as at the moment, there's no current funding on the table from Sport England. However, if we move to the next slide. This is a rather busy slide, and we just really wanted to present to the Scrutiny Committee various options in terms of how the affordability of the project may change depending on how much borrowing and other work, other funding could be achieved from the council. So if we were not to proceed with the project, then of course the borrowing would be zero. However, we have already incurred £2 million of we have already incurred £2 million of revenue cost, and that would need to be repaid, and potentially that could have to go to the revenue account. So if we do continue with the project, the total project cost is 29 million. That £2 million for design still has to be paid for. If that were only funded through borrowing, then the annual borrowing for that amount of funding would be £1.58 million. And in terms of just looking at the Sundawn budget at the moment, without any other forms of capital receipt, it does produce a negative value over 25 years in terms of net present value. The revenue impact over 5 years would be £2.457 million. And over 25 years, we're looking at an impact on the council of 7.294 million over 25 years. So it's so to say, unaffordable on the revenue budget if we were just to borrow all of the money because of the size of the borrowing entail. However, if we were to look at all of the subsidy budgets that are currently provided to leisure facilities at the moment, the picture suddenly starts to improve, and we can see that over time it becomes more affordable. If we can actually generate a capital receipt and some funding through SIL, for instance, so we only borrow 24.8 million, with potentially 4 million from capital receipts and £500,000 from SIL, so our borrowing reduces to 85%. You can see there that we start to break even after 6 years, which is much more affordable. Certainly over the life of the contract, we'll see a positive, the life of the building over 25 years, we'll see a positive £4.8 million positive picture for the council. If we can maximise the amount of SIL funding and capital receipts that we can generate and reduce borrowing to around 22.3 million, we will start to break even very rapidly after 1 year. Within the first year, we'll break even and we'll generate a positive revenue picture for the council. So really the affordability of the scheme, we will expect to be paid by the operator to lease the building because it'll be generating so much revenue. But very much the affordability depends on how much capital receipt and SIL and other grant funding that we can achieve in order to reduce the borrowing. Okay, next slide. One of the things that we were asked to look at council last year was whether or not there were two additional items we could investigate. Members asked if we could look at the feasibility of putting solar panels over the existing car parks in the sports village. We have investigated that. This is something which a number of local authorities are looking at. The main challenge with this, I'm afraid, is also down to that issue of affordability. So whilst there's a case study that I put as an appendix to this, which was from a local authority scheme, similar size at Otley, in just north of Leeds, where the NHS installed solar panels over a similar size car park, the capital cost of which was 1.1 million, but it saved £75,000 per annum in terms of electricity bills. In general, that's a sort of break-even position. So if the council was prepared to borrow an additional, probably with inflation, I'm anticipating about 1.2 million in capital expenditure, then that's potentially a scheme that would pay for itself over a 25-year period. Again, that would require an additional 1.2 million in borrowing. We're also asked to look at whether it's feasible to decarbonise the original Sports Village building. You'll be familiar with that we're currently doing a similar scheme in Bishop's Castle. We were fortunate in Bishop's Castle in that we were offered a very significant grant from the government's PSDS scheme of over £2.5 million to implement that scheme. That scheme is no longer available to us. And unfortunately, there isn't grant funding available from the government to undertake these decarbonisation schemes, but the cost still remains the same. So we've had an estimate from our contractors that to decarbonise, remove the existing gas boilers, which are coming end of life at the Sports Village, and put in an electric solution and enhance the insulation of the Sports Village would cost an additional £3 million of expenditure. Whilst that would operationally would break even, there wouldn't be any opportunity to repay that £3 million. It would have to be a sunk investment at this stage. Let's move on. So in terms of progress, it's been a long road getting this project to this stage. From last year's council in September 24, we were given authority to proceed with design and planning. We have a planning application going to the Northern Planning Committee next week on the 18th of November, where we'll be seeking planning permission, and following scrutiny and subject to any comments members may have, our intention is to try and bring this to Cabinet on the 21st of January and full council for a decision on whether to proceed with construction on the 26th of February. I think that brings us to a close. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Very interesting slides. I think I'll open it straight up to members of the committee. We'll start with Dawn.
Right, there's a number of points I'd like to be considered. So we've got an overall capital cost of 29, but 2 million already spent. I would like to see the estimate assumptions that that's built on. It's paid for by 4.5 million SIL and 24.6 of borrowing. So this, I'm coming at this from the financial position and where we are and the approval. The revenue cost based on interest rates. Now I was given interest rates of between 3.5% to 7.1% roughly. So I took a middle of the road figure of 5.4, which came out at 1.3, just over a million to the revenue account. You've actually predicted that higher at 1.58. So I'd like to know how this cost will be covered. I know you've given us some information there, and I'd like to know how much the council will receive off of receipts and what assumptions that's based on. Will this be guaranteed or dependent upon footfall, which is also based on assumptions? It's in a deprived area, so are you estimating that these people will be able to afford this? How's that going to affect it? You're expecting membership to rise by 263 to 320%. Here I see a risk of optimism bias. So again, what estimate assumptions have been used in that? You're predicting operational savings because of an all-electric building. I have to challenge that potentially. Again, I'd like to see some more figures from you. So first of all, I'd like to know how much the whole all-electric option costs, how that compares to a super insulated but more conventional option would be. I actually live in a super insulated all-electric building. It's currently 1,800 square foot. I am paying more to heat that than when I was in a super insulated, slightly different mixed model heating of 5,500 square feet. So again, you've got some assumptions built in there, and I'd like to understand what they are because they're going to impact on it. Sorry, there's a couple more. How are the costs of the build estimated? Because we've had lots of issues with public sector budgeting being a problem in the past. I need to be able to challenge the accuracy of these. I'd like to know how will the scope be restricted, because it is so easy when you're in these things, because it looks fabulous. It looks absolutely fabulous. But once you're in there, somebody said, that would be a lovely idea. Can we just have that? Can we just have that? And that's where we've got our scope creep. And suddenly, however many more millions creep in. How will the costs be controlled to ensure that there are no cost overruns? Here I'm interested in, are there going to be penalties built in for the architects, for the project managers, for the contractors? And if they are, what are they going to do? Delays cost money. So how will the timeline be managed and what penalties will be imposed for any delay? So what kind of critical path management is going to be undertaken? Do we have the skills within the authority to manage that, or are they going to be marking their own homework again? So I really do have some concerns over the assumptions that are under this, the budgeting methodology that's been used, and the potential of optimism bias. So there's a big one because of the improvement board. I'd actually like to see, sorry, James, I'd like to see the overall impact of interest repayments on the financial position for 24-25 and 25-26, if this should progress. Thank you.
There's quite a lot there.
So
you've asked a lot of what I'm going to ask, so I think we can tick all this off.
I'm quite happy to wait for the
I think we can tick it all off now before we move to someone else. Is that all right with officers? We can just work our way through that.
Yes, but I feel the way that we've adopted this is we've gone for a design and build approach. So we've selected a contractor who is overall responsibility for the design and the build. So we are confident that whatever is being put down on the designs is buildable for a budget. Now, the way that the approach works is the contractor goes out to tender with all the different subcontractors to get value for money. And at the moment, I've given you an estimate based on the current designs. At the moment, the contractor is finalising those final estimates. And in the next space of the next 3 weeks before we go to cabinet, they will give me what's called price certainty. So they will present to me the costs of all itemised elements of the construction. So that would be how much for the concrete in the how much for the concrete, how much for the metal that's going into it, how much for every aspect of the build, and we'll get a detailed breakdown of that. I'm expecting that in 3 weeks' time. I'm more than happy to share that. That's not well. It's commercially confidential in terms of, but if members could, please don't publish that, but more than happy to share those. And the beauty of this approach is there are certain instances where councils do a detailed design and then try and find somewhere to build it. And that generally doesn't work on something as particular as a major swimming pool and leisure facility. That's why I've approached this design and build, because it gives us price certainty, and the scope of the project is fixed. So those elements that Councillor Wilson and myself presented are the key elements that we put in the requirements. There is a detailed list of requirements, and certainly what gets agreed at council becomes must-haves. So in other words, they cannot be deleted or they cannot be added to without council approval. So they become fixed. And one of the features we did at, if you look at the experience, we used the same contractor and the same designer at Whitchurch. We actually came in under budget and ahead of schedule. We have the selection process only open to experienced leisure centre developers. We went out to the market, and Pelican Construction, who did Whitchurch, also responded, and they have a reputation in the market for producing high quality designs ahead of schedule and within budget. And they came in, they were the preferred supplier. So I feel confident that with you're absolutely right. Scope control is absolutely vital, and I will be responsible for ensuring that nobody adds anything to the scope. We have a project board. I will be getting reports. I will sit down with the contractor every month in order to review their cost proposals. We will have a clerk of works on site from the council who will be observing the quality and the work being undertaken. We will have a quantity surveyor employed by the council who will review the contractor's submission. Each month, the council will submit a proposal demonstrating how much work they have committed against their price, and we will only pay for what work has been delivered. The budget is fixed. They cannot go over the budget they submit unless there is a suitably agreed variation, and I will be responsible for managing those. Any variations will have to come back to senior officers. I'm expecting responsibility, if we get approval, will be delegated to the service director. And if there are any issues that require extra funding, we would go back to the Section 151 officer. But I feel confident with the approach we've taken and the team we've got that we will come in on budget and on time. So that's cost control, critical path management. The assumption, in terms of the assumptions, the way in which, one of the things we will do when the proposal's submitted for the final costs from the contractor in 3 weeks' time, I will do an independent benchmarking exercise where we'll be looking at those costs compared to other projects. So I do have access to a specialist who also works for Sport England, assessing Sport England projects, and he will arrange to test the cost submissions that they have made to ensure we're getting value for money. A very useful estimate as a ballpark figure is for swimming pools and other pools, but particularly swimming pools, is to look at the price of the overall construction costs per square metre. That's a useful benchmark. I've been using a benchmark of £6,500 for this particular project per metre. That's slightly more than we did for Whitchurch, but there has been inflation since the Whitchurch project was approved. And currently, my advisor is telling me that costs have increased significantly in new projects. This project's been running for 2 years now. And so since we appointed the contractor almost a year ago, there's almost an expectation now that that contractor delivers for our budget. And that's certainly something which I've insisted on, that we maintain the budget and maintain the estimates that I've given you. So we are certainly providing sort of that degree of control and benchmarking to ensure that we get the right price. But certainly, I think, if you look at what we delivered at Whitchurch, that is considered in the market very good value for money. And I would expect that we will endeavour to demonstrate value for money with whatever price we finalise here. Football, we've we've done several estimates. We've actually used the Sport England database to estimate social value, and they've estimated a footfall of 50,000 users. Our in terms of the we've been working with Denbighshire Council's UK Leisure Framework as our purchasing framework provider, and the agent for that framework is called Alliance Leisure, a company that specialises in managing leisure centre projects, and they have done their own database analysis, and they've come up with a similar number of expected users. And likewise, in terms of the other project that we'll be looking at today is the leisure services contract. Strategic Leisure have been the advisor on that particular project, and they've come up with an estimate for the expected number of users for this facility, and that's come up with a similar aim as well. So I think we're quite confident. The main driver to the success of all leisure facilities of this size, and well, some members might not like this, but it is actually the availability of parking. The more parking you have, the more users you will get. The newer your facilities and the more modern they are, the more users you will get. I am anticipating, certainly if you look at what happened at Whitchurch, we have far exceeded the expectations in terms of user numbers in terms of Whitchurch because of the quality and the availability of parking that's delivered at that particular site. So I do feel confident that what we've delivered in terms of our estimates for revenue are actually on the conservative side. I think we would probably expect the actual numbers to exceed that.
Especially with schools as well.
Especially schools as well. Schools. I mean, one of the big drivers at the moment, I mean, schools tend to be fixed in the sense that we know how many schools are likely to use the facility. They obviously, there's a free market there. They could go to other swimming pools. But there are about 20 schools that we're expecting. But also a key driver will be parents wanting to teach their children to swim. And we're seeing a big demand for that across the county. And certainly these facilities are very much geared towards being family friendly. And we expect that the revenue from swimming will exceed our expectations as well.
And then the electric, I might come back to you on that.
Well, yeah, come back to that. We did look, when we looked at Whitchurch, we did look at a combination of a traditional gas hybrid model, where obviously the lights are provided by electricity, but the swimming pool was heated by gas, compared to an air source heat pump. We did do a detailed study on that. The costs were, you don't have the cost of obviously you don't have to install gas, so you save money. In terms of the capital costs, there's very little difference. There's slightly marginally increasing costs if we're using air source heat pumps, are slightly more expensive than a gas. These are very significant heat pumps. They're not like a domestic heat pump. They are enormous. They're the size of a road container. So I would expect that to be, certainly I can share you that report we did for Whitchurch, which shows the comparison. So yes, but I think the expectation from the market is that electricity prices will fall, but typically there's 3 times, electricity is 3 times as much per therm than gas, but your air source heat pumps are meant to give you 3 times the efficiency. So theoretically they balance out, but yes.
I've got one very quick follow-up. Just links onto that. One very quick one is liabilities and penalties. What's being built into the contracts when you're commissioning? Because when you're using multiple partners, they're subcontracting down to others.
Yes.
Somebody goes bust, as is happening, in the current climate. Who is going to be liable? Penalties will be imposed so that we don't end up picking up the costs of that, because variation orders, and I've been involved in construction things, those variations can be quite considerable.
Yes, I mean, again, I'm confident in the supplier we've got. Certainly, a contractor going bust is a major risk to the project, cause delays. Members might recall that there was a major construction company called ISG that went bankrupt last year, and they were in the process of completing many leisure centres for local authorities across the country, and that resulted in additional cost. It took about 6 months, but unfortunately, the remainder of the market was able to pick up most of those projects and still deliver those. But inevitably, this mobilising new contractors is going to cost additional. I'm confident with the contractor we've got, Pelican. They are actually, Pelican UK Limited is a subsidy of Pelican, which is a Dutch company that specialises in only delivering leisure centres. So they deliver all the leisure centres for John Lloyd in the UK, and they also only take on 3 or 4 contracts at a time in the UK because they want to maintain. It's a family-run business, wholly owned by family business, that is very financially stable. We've done financial checks on them, and we're very confident with them. There will be a parent company guarantee from Holland to oversee Pelican in terms of their performance. They will be signing up to collateral warranties for all aspects of their construction, so that if they don't deliver, we'll be able to call upon those if there's any particular failures. And all of the major subcontractors on the contract will also be required to sign up to collateral warranties. So, for example, the swimming pool tank, the rebar that goes underneath that, I'd expect a collateral warranty for that. I would expect the pool tank to last 100 years. So the expected life expectancy of a pool tank is 100 years under modern standards. I'd expect the building itself to last at least 40 years before it needed a major refurbishment. So we are looking to provide this will be a facility that if it's decided to go ahead, will have a longevity and will be to a very, very high standard.
I'd just like to say thank you for a very comprehensive response.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I've got a number of speakers. I've got David, Brendan, Alan and Chris. So if we can rapidly go through those.
Thank you. Even know me well, will tell you that I've been a lifelong supporter of and enthusiast for leisure facilities with provision, involved in many in Market Drayton over my time on various councils. However, anybody listening into this must be thinking we've stepped into a different universe. Here we are, publicly saying that we cannot balance the books this year. And I know this is capital, it's not revenue, but there is a revenue consequence. We already are looking at cuts all over the place. How is it going to look to the man in the street out there? We've already seen today there was an announcement of £500,000 for, was it the bit of the North West Relief Road that wasn't North West Relief Road? Public outcry over that. I thought they said they were bankrupt and they're now wasting £500,000 on this road. Just £30 million. 30 million.
David, I don't know why that's on the website. We have not agreed that. So let's not.
No, it doesn't matter.
It needs to come off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Leader. Yes, I'm not. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have mentioned that because I knew myself it wasn't right. But it's the reaction that I'm talking about here. It's not the actual event. It's the reaction to it. We are trying to take the public with us. We are going to have to do all sorts of things which the people are going to think are very unpopular, whether it's the additional borrowing, or whatever it happens to be that we have to do with funds going forward and prevent the commissioners from walking in. And yes, well, I just think it's the wrong time. I think it's a lovely scheme, absolutely love it, but I think this is not the time to do it. That's one.
Thank you, David. Where was I? Brendan.
Thank you, Chair. Get back to the energy system. There is a mention there in section 6, I think, about potential biochar. I'm actually going to come in and be a champion for that here for a very good reason. I've been looking at the numbers. First of all, get back the solar panels over the car park. That's 1.3 million. It takes 16 years, £75,000 a year. And that is what are currently the most expensive electricity prices on the planet. I believe that will come down. I'm not talking about changes of government, but it's going to have to come down one way or another. So that saving is going to take even longer by this time you're into recapitalising your solar panels. And again, we would say the same thing for the rooftop solar panels on the building itself. The cost in there of the airport heat pumps is £3 million. And those last somewhere between 10 and 20 years. I think the industrial ones might go a bit longer, but you are looking at 2 to 3 generations of heat pumps and solar panels over the lifetime of this facility, because 40 years plus with refurbishment. Biochar is essentially an exquisitely engineered, sophisticated wood burning heat stove. You know what I mean? it will probably outlast the facility itself. So it's going to be one non-recurring cost to produce it. Based on the Ludlow energy figures, back of a napkin figures by myself, I reckon you need 41,000 barrels plants to produce both thermal energy and the electricity. One plant produces about 150 homes worth of electricity, so forward about 600. I don't need to be modelled for the leisure sector, but I suspect it's going to be close there. And certainly the thermal requirements for heating and for the water heating are going to be there. So even just the car park panels plus the air source heat pumps, that's about 4 million. You've got your 4 C1000 pyrolysis plants there. The council's invested in the firms building them and building them just down the road, as opposed to the other equipment, which is probably going to come from China. Panels might be built by slaves. They're produced by baking coal and silica together, particularly green, and then transported halfway around the world. The plants are built above the border in Belfast. The feedstock, we've got plenty of feedstock within the county. So in terms of green credentials, it's pretty fabulous. And there's certainly a return from the plant from the biochar produced. Now, we're sceptical about the future state of the carbon trading market, particularly certain backpedaling recently by Mr. Blair and Mr. Gates. But, however long that lasts, you at least get that money return as well in the initial years of it. So this seems to be what should be the default option in terms of producing bulk heat and electricity for any facility like this within the county, surely. I know you've mentioned to look at it, but it's only a one paragraph passing thing. I think this needs much more serious consideration as a superior option to what's proposed.
Yes, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say yes, respond, but also I'm not sure in terms of biochar, who from a portfolio, I'm not 100% up to speed. Who's in charge of that? From your Rob Wilson. I was going to say this might be something that, as a committee, we recommend to Rob to pick up with yourselves just to make sure this is followed through. Unless Heather's got a.
We are looking at that, and of course we are investing in Ludlow at the moment, but it is very much still a pilot scheme.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're not doing it, but we are being slightly cautious, and I think that actually James will pick up some of the savings around leisure contracts and so on, which is why this is important.
Okay. Yeah, I think in terms of the report, we don't have any further recommendations here, but if we take this to cabinet, I think what we're suggesting as officers is, because there's no grant available to do decarbonisation of the traditional scheme, that it would probably be better, more cost effective to look at a biochar solution for an area heat network in the Sunderland area, which would support both the Sunderland facility, but also if you think about it, we've also got next door, we've got the Severn Health Centre, you've got a large Montgomery House, which is a lot of old people's homes. Nearby, you've got a local school, Polescott Primary School. We've got the local, a large local population. There's potentially more scope to invest in a local heat network using biochar than to spend £3 million on decarbonising. So I'd concur with the councillor that going down investigating the biochar would be probably more cost effective than looking at a traditional decarbonisation scheme. So I concur with the councillor on that.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're looking at it and taking this seriously. What I would say, though, with that sort of a network, by the time you start your distribution works, your distribution infrastructure to get it out to all those different facilities and houses, it might make less sense. We've been to visit with Councillor Kidd and Councillor Hughes to the production facility, and I think these were best standalone, very localised facility to serve a particular application like that. Now, if there's something immediately adjacent, I'm sure you could particularly possibly incorporate that into the network. But again, it'd be great to see the investigations, but I suspect localised works better with the pyrolysis from what we found from it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Alan. I've got Chris. Alan and Chris, who's on my list. And then Chris.
Hi. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. With the footfall estimates, was the adjacency to the David Lloyd Shrewsbury Club facility factored in either in it could have positive and negative impacts there. One that shares obviously some of the local demand, but also since David Lloyd took over that facility, the prices have increased significantly. So you might attract some of the existing Shrewsbury Club users into the new facility. So that was my first question. What has that been taken into account in the The second one, you mentioned in terms of cost control when there was going to be variation, that it would come back to you and then be discussed with James. Is there scope to also include a councillor in that decision-making process, whether it be cabinet or a particular portfolio holder? You know, certainly if costs were into the 5 figures or something like that, just to give that extra oversight.
Sorry, I forgot to mention something. If the recommendation to cabinet and council is approved, we'd expect significant decisions to be delegated to the service director in consultation with the portfolio holder, which is Councillor Owen. So I'm very sorry, I forgot to mention Councillor Owen over there. I was in full flow. Yes, going back to the first point, all of the modelling associated with footfall does include all of the competitors in the area. We do have a competitor analysis that I could share with councillors if they wanted to see that. This is very much a question about public leisure tourism versus private leisure provision. And one of the things that people may be surprised at when they visit Whitchurch is that Whitchurch was built by the same contractor that designs and builds all the John Lloyd leisure centres in the UK. It is of the quality of a John Lloyd leisure centre, and we will look to see that in the sort of quality that we get out of the provision. That's because of the nature of the designer. There will be a significant cost difference between the offering at the Sports Village and John Lloyd. John Lloyd, it'll be more than half, if not greater, a third of the price of the John Lloyd facility, because it is aimed at the public, not, dare I say, people who can afford to go to John Lloyd. So I expect that we will take customers off John Lloyd.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. 3 points, perhaps in a slightly old order. And firstly to say, obviously, it's a fantastic scheme and looks brilliant. And I'm sure thousands, tens of thousands of people would benefit from it. So I think in terms of the pitch, it's a great offer and looks very exciting and will be a great addition to Shropshire. However, 3 things. One was we've just come out of talking about the big capital expenditure project in Shrewsbury, which it feels as though Shrewsbury Town Council and the BTP weren't as involved as they would like to have been. Jumping to conclusions. This is very much a Shropshire Council project, as I understand it. How would the local town council be involved in finalising the detail of it and in helping contribute to its future operation? I mean, as a member, lived-in member, I'm concerned about devolution. So that's the kind of challenge you'd expect from me, I think. 2 more points. One is, being slightly picky. I've looked at page 26, which is your a 20-minute travel zone, because I was a bit surprised when you said 2/3 of the population of Shropshire would be in 20 minutes. And if we look at page 26, it looks as though Telford has become part of our 20-minute travel zone. And I wonder whether that's the ceremonial county of Shropshire, and to what extent that skews the figures, because I'm happy with it benefiting half the population of Shropshire, and I'm happy with it benefiting Telford. I'm just wanting us to be clear on that point. And lastly, in terms of the costs, I must say I share David Minnerit's concerns about the ongoing revenue cost. I mean, all the figures look very good and very sensible, but crudely in my mind, we'd be paying, wouldn't we, 1 million or so a year to start with on interest costs. And we'd be paying 500,000 or so a year on repayments. And that's quite a lot of money for a council in a very difficult financial position. In the absence of revenue budgets, and there may be revenue budgets further down the report, which I haven't yet got to, that looks like 1.5 million that we have to somehow find. And I'm concerned that feels quite a large amount, and whether there are any other ways of meeting that annual cost.
Okay. So in terms of the town council, I certainly, myself and Laura's predecessor, had a meeting with the town council in May of last year, where we presented the proposals and went through the details with the councillors and the town clerk directly. They were involved in the consultation exercise. And I recently had a meeting with Councillor Wagner, who was, I think, wearing two hats. So both as mayor and was also deputy leader. But I've arranged to go and visit the town council. I'm speaking to Helen Ball, the town clerk. I think it's a week on Monday to discuss swimming provision in the town. Obviously, this is looking to be a county facility, not just about the town centre. Clearly, there will be questions over the future of the quarry, and I wanted to explore. Councillor Wagner was very keen that we explored that with the town council, whether or not we can partner with them or look at options for the future of community-based swimming in the town centre and the sort of south and west of the town. So we are going to look and explore that. Yes. In terms of the area of 20-minute drive, yes, your eyesight's better than mine. But in terms of, I think the way I drafted the report is that there are, I mean, in terms of usability, we think that the catchment area for the population is 217,000. That's people who could use that. Potentially, there will be people from Telford and Wrekin that do actually visit the centre and provide revenue and support that. They're not necessarily all going to be members of the unitary authority. Yes, they could be, as you rightly say, from the ceremonial county. Just as Whitchurch serves the community of South Cheshire very well, likewise Oswestry serves the community of North Wales, and Ludlow the community of Gloucestershire. Yes. And then the ongoing revenue costs. Is somebody going to throw me a lifeline? No.
Is that James's job?
I can come in on that. Yeah. So I suppose the thing to think about here is that this is part of a much kind of bigger consideration. We need to provide various kind of statutory functions, and we have to provide provision in various different ways. What the figures are showing is that purely funding from borrowing and purely taking into account the cost of this centre to repay that, there is a net cost, and that's shown in the tables that were put up on the screen or in the report. So the Sundawn budget alone it shows a 5-year revenue implication of £2.5 million negative. So that's the cost over 5 years for revenue. If you take into account all of the budgets within that area that could be freed up and reallocated, actually that falls to a much lower figure, 670. But if you take into account capital receipts and SIL, it actually turns into a positive position. So what it's effectively saying is the cost of providing swim provision in Shrewsbury under a new facility would be cheaper and would be sufficiently cheaper to cover the cost of the borrowing associated with that. And that's the thing I think to take into account.
Okay. Go on then, Chris.
Okay, just to come back on that just quickly. I think it's item 5.3 says that we'd be repaying the 25 million over a 40-year period. So is that costed in there? Because I find that a bit difficult given the interest charges that are bound to be there. I mean, maybe I'm talking about a cash position rather than a larger position, but to me, if we're spending 25 million, we've got an interest rate which will go with that. And if we're repaying that 25 million over 40 years, we've got a repayment cost which goes with that. And that seems to me to be 1 or 1.5 million a year. I mean, we might be able to divert funds from other sources, but going back to our financial emergency, it's still real money which we could have used elsewhere. Thank you.
So it's the we need to take into account the running costs of the facility and the income that we generated through that. So taking that into account with a new modern facility, the cost of running and the level of income generated through that compared to the cost that we are currently subsidising services within the Shrewsbury area, you end up with a reduced cost compared to that. So the overall position, so I'm not going to say this won't cost the council money. It does. We have to subsidise services. That's what the councils are here for. What I'm saying is that it will cost less than the current cost of provision within Shrewsbury. And therefore there's a reduction. Therefore it's a saving that we consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. James, can we come in on that point before I go to Craig and Donna?
I think it's just basically reiterating what James just said, but if we don't go ahead with a project like this to sort of subsidise the costs over a long period of time, we then have to find the savings through other means to try and reduce the budget on leisure centres. And we're significantly subsidising both Shrewsbury leisure centres at the moment. There's only one other option beyond this. If we don't try and make it into a positive position for at least one of the leisure centres, all we'll end up with having to do is reduce the swimming provision in Shropshire to try and reduce that budget instead. So it's important for us that we keep that provision available rather than just making cuts to try and meet a budget line.
Craig?
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if the point's more relevant to gender over 13, but I just wanted to raise it now. Just, I suppose, Dawn's already raised it, just concerned around, we've referenced that the facility could be built in an area of deprivation and those kind of things. I think it's just how likely is it that those residents will actually access the services when you look at the cost, probably a monthly membership at £27.50. If you've got a family of 4, are they actually going to use that? Because ultimately for healthy residents in Shropshire, the more we can encourage to use leisure centre services, actually our bills further down the line would be a lot cheaper. And probably it feels a little bit to me like when my wife buys a packet of donuts and then tells me I'm on a diet and can't eat them. So I don't know where that falls.
Heather, did you have something to say on that specific point you
I can do something about the donuts. But yes, actually, already Community Leisure are doing quite a lot of work in the Harscott area to get engaged with people there, and increasingly that working is part of the prevention programme, and they won't sell donuts, hopefully. But there are a whole range of things that they are doing to try and engage. There's social prescribing, there's a whole lot of work to be done with the local GPs and the local schools, which is now happening. So that social interaction is starting. It takes time, but actually it's starting now, even without a good leisure centre. And it does need, I mean, we've all been in their accounts. It's loud, it's difficult, it's not a pleasant place to be in for any length of time, and we've been in there for a very long time. So what I can say about that is it is part of the whole preventative agenda. And having a good leisure provider, whether it's the one we have at the moment or whether it's another one, because if we have a good bidding process, and we will be going out to tender for that in January, you will get a much better range of people bidding. You will actually have a chance of reducing, as has been said, the outgoings, but also aid the communities. My real concern is that this is not a statutory service. Because it's not a statutory service, it is at risk. So what we need to do is make it as secure as we can for the future. Now, the numbers horrify me as well, but there's a bigger there's a bigger thing that we need to look at alongside the health service, alongside getting in other grant funding and the other deliveries, because if we keep thinking in silos, which is, oh, this is just the leisure service, or this is just that, we're not going to tick off these other things that we will have a duty to do. So that's what this is about, and it should reduce revenue and it should safeguard leisure if we can get a decent provider. And that's not to say we don't have a decent provider, but if we have a good range of decent providers come forward and bid on the contract. So that, for me, makes this worthwhile, even though it is in Shrewsbury.
Brilliant, thank you. Laura, and then I'll come to Donna.
Just to come in on 2 points really, in terms of councillor, and you comment around I can't say it's right at the end of the day, isn't it? Deprivation area, etc. I think it's a valid point, but I think part of what you've seen there is around a choice of activities that will sit within that structure, and I really particularly want to highlight the toning suite. So, and I'll pick up on what Heather's saying, because the prevention agenda is an area where we have to as an authority invest in. It hasn't been invested in previously, really, let's be honest. So we need to look at, we've got the highest spend across our social care budget. We know that. It's between 70 and 80% of the budget that we spend. We've got high numbers of those within particularly adult social care who've got a physical disability. We've got a high number that are due to falls that end up in care homes, that end up in our hospitals, that end up then into a longer term care support service. So I think what we're trying to say is let's absolutely agree with what Heather's saying, let's not look at this in terms of it's a leisure service. This is fundamental really to some of the work that we need to do on the longer term support for our residents. We've got an ageing cohort. We've got assets that are failing, are continuing to fail, and will continue to cost the local authority money that isn't planned. We've got a leak in one of our pools at the moment, as you're aware. So it's those types of things that we just need. We're trying to look at across, and we've got another item later on which we'll talk about, and you'll see why we're trying to make some of those connections as well. Two of those services within Shrewsbury, the two. Cost us about £1 million in total to run revenue pressure already. So I just wanted to lay that out so that it's not a direct cost. There's already those costs associated with that. But please don't think about it in the round. But I completely understand where people are coming from in terms of where we are at the moment. We're sat here thinking, so I know we know that, but we have to think about the longer term as well. So, and that's why we want to have that discussion today, and want to be open and transparent about do we or don't we go with it. We need to have that wider conversation.
Yes, thank you, Donna.
Thank you. I'll try and make this quick because I know time's ticking on. On that point, really, I've got a couple of quick questions. So one is obviously there's the unforeseen cost in market trading pool having cracked. Has the budget for fixing that impacted the budget for other projects such as these, or is it just being thrown on top as an extra cost? Similar to that, if I'm understanding correctly, what we're proposing here is to bring this newer facility online because it will be a revenue generator. We have services at the moment that are losing money. So are we proposing to take those services offline, or are we going to be subsidising those failing services with this one? And then my third question is actually, the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, let's say, doesn't have the best grasp on her budget. So going forward, it's foreseeable that the building costs could rise quite significantly over the next couple of years. And essentially, I'm questioning the timing of this and whether in quite a variable landscape, whether this is the right time to do it. Because during COVID, we saw building costs double within a year. So if that happens on this project, presumably Pelican, as lovely as they are, don't want to be making a loss on the project themselves. They would then throw that cost back onto us, and our cost would then double. So what would be the contingency in that kind of scenario?
So if we reverse order on those. So apologies, I've got to leave. Pelican, but yes, the costs that Pelican are providing for it do include an allowance for inflation. Once they give me their fixed costs at the end of each month, those will be fixed. They cannot increase them by inflation. They will take the risk on inflation. So
they would take a hit on that. They would make a loss on the project if they went above that threshold.
if inflation was to increase more than they forecast, the risk would be on them. They would come back to us. So that's that one. And they did that. They did the same thing at Whitchurch. And they took the risk on inflation. They didn't charge us anything. We came in under budget.
Okay.
In terms of revenue generation, building costs.
Well, what I was saying, are we taking failing services offline to save us those costs, or are we just going to be subsidising what I'm assuming a failing services with a revenue generating service?
I think it's a really good question, and I think we need to have a conversation about the quarry. Is what I'd say. I think it needs to be a decision that needs to be discussed and looked at in terms of options and what we do with that. Maybe an item that needs to be brought back here, and for a final decision on that. But we have
this. I've been on this committee for a while, and it had come here. This is a bit of I've seen swimming in Shrewsbury quite a number of times, and previous administration was beaten with a very large stick when you mentioned the quarry. So I'm sure it can come back. So, I mean, the conversations have been had, but I think there is no doubt something will need to be done. And that is something we can look at as a committee, but I think if we do, we need to see firm plans and make a decision on it. We can't rehash what we've looked at for the past nearly 10 years.
I mean, those two decisions to me would seem to need to be taken together, because you can't just make a decision on whether you're going to spend a lot more money if we're not also looking at savings on the same time.
That's all been said. I think you're saying exactly everything that has been going round and round for a number of years. No, I know you're. I'm just saying. I'm glad someone else is saying it, because I think I'm probably the only one in the room now, apart from perhaps Roger, that was here before, that's heard all this before, and it still stands. It's still relevant now, as it was in 2016 when it was sort of first talked about.
If we're making a proposal then for the cabinet, maybe that would be something to tack on to.
Yeah.
That.
So just picking up that point about whether this should be postponed again. Inflation is increasing these. I think if inflation is currently in the building relating to this is running at about 5% per annum, and we have a contractor who's prepared to take that risk and fix their costs at the end of this month if they go forward. If we were to say let's think about this for another 6 months or a year, the cost to complete this project will increase by 5%. Now that's £1.5 million in addition to the £29 million that we've got on the table at the moment. Delay will only increase the costs more. Increasing the costs will reduce the financial viability of the scheme. I think, what if we were to come back in a year's time with a different proposal at a different time? If you wanted it to be below 29 million, it won't be a competition pool. It will be one pool. There won't be a learner pool.
We need a competition pool. That's the things that, when we've had scrutiny before, we had competitors, swimming clubs coming to us saying young people, or all people in Shropshire who want to compete in swimming, end up having to go out of the county. There's nowhere really to host it here. So I think that's, a valid point. I'm conscious of time. I've got Wendy had indicated quickly, and then Dawn, and then we'll bring this item to a close, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, market rate one. Repairs and market rate have been paid out of repairs and maintenance, which is revenue. Yeah. It has no impact on this particular project.
Yeah, sorry, I agree with Laura and what Heather said as far as the health implications of this. The figures are huge and mind-blowing as far as costs and whatever. I'm going back to the solar panel proposal on top. How much cheaper would it be to have it done at the same time? If we're spending a lot of money to have it done, is it the same developer that does the solar panels? And then it's like it cost more if again that was delayed.
I think once you look at it as two separate projects with all building work, it's Pelican could do it. Pelican have said to me they don't want to do it because solar panel technology is new. Pelican specialise in building swimming pools and gyms. They do not profess to have a speciality in solar panel work. They consider that a particular risk. They would rather we commission that separately. But there are people such as, for example, we're doing a solar farm at Oswestry on the old tip there. We've just done a competitive exercise and appointed, there was, a dozen companies that we went to that specialise in solar farms that we went out to tender for. We've selected a company there, the ones that provided this business case, this option. So there are firms that do specialise in that, but there's a certain element of new technology associated with it. And the council pointed out some of those issues with solar panels. But again, that's something, it's for them to decide whether or not they want to do that particular exercise.
Well, thank you, Chair. So just very quickly, and I take all of your points about it will cost more when we get further down the line, and all of the social impact valuation that has been put on this. Out myself, I could swim it before I could walk. So I'm thoroughly supportive of that. But the boards I'm sitting on at the moment, this is about money and what we can afford to do. And unless I can see those figures from James, the net impact of how that's going to affect the revenue budget, 24-25 and 25-26, hopefully the administration will have managed to move into a stabilisation phase by then. But we've got to know, genuinely, we've got to know what the impact will be short term on taking this forward. So I'd ask for those numbers, please.
Okay, and Alan, very last point.
Yeah, just relating to that, the figures that included SIL, both a small amount of SIL and a large amount of SIL, and the 4 million capital receipts, are they speculative, or is there a sort? I'm not expecting you to commit, but is there somewhere where we can generate 4 million capital receipts relatively feasibly, and is the SIL money that's already held, or is it that based on SIL generated from future development?
So it's as long as it's short as if it is the answer in sense. So there is capital receipt provision built in around this. Whether that's already generated or to be generated in the future is a cash flow issue, which is for me to kind of worry about. It's about whether the scheme stacks up, and SIL is the same kind of argument in a sense. We do have, I think it's about 29 million pounds worth of SIL that's unspent at the moment, but it's where that's allocated in the current figures. But there is also significant SIL to be generated in the future. And one of the things that we need to get better at is looking at that SIL and capital receipt generation into the future and making sure we're allocating it into the schemes that make the most sense, which is why we're reviewing the overall capital strategy to get the right mix within that. All of that is just one lever within setting our financial strategy on the revenue side. So I hear all of the concerns and the issues that are being raised, and believe me, I get this. I'm living and breathing this constantly. We have to move forward as an organisation, and we have to find a way that we can move forward as an organisation to deliver the best services that we can within the financial envelope that we have. So this really comes down to choices, and I think ultimately there will be a question about what choices the organisation wants to make, what choices the administration wants to take. It's not all about closing everything. We do need to keep services running within Shropshire, but there are choices about which of those services they are and what the relative costs of those will be. And that's not a decision for today or even this financial year. That's a decision that says, looking forward over the next 5 years, 10 years into the future, what is the most appropriate mix that we have, which we can use to live within our affordability envelope. That's what it will come down to. So that's not really an answer at all in lots of ways, but it is that kind of long-term strategy that we need to think of. So, go back to the original question. Whether we have that money in the bank or not isn't an issue. It's the fact that we have that allocation strategically built in, and the scheme itself, which is what's shown in this report, stacks up financially as a scheme. That will end up in the big picture as well.
Thank you. So our job isn't to approve this report. That's a decision for Cabinet. They will make the decision. It's whether we endorse this to go forward with both Cabinet reviews, whether it will have scrutiny endorsement. With it, Claire has made some notes, so we can tag on to that a lot of the comments that have been made by the committee today to go forward. So I think it's a simple thing of, does Scrutiny Committee endorse this report to go to Cabinet? Those in favour, please show.
Those questions go sent to Cabinet as well.
Yeah, and of course, as group leaders and members generally, you can go to Cabinet and raise those points as well. But we'll certainly give our feedback, as it were, to go along with it. So those in favour? Anyone against? Brilliant. We will send that with our endorsement to Cabinet with some caveats.
Thank you.
Moving on swiftly, develop contribution to task and finish groups. This is a reporting back item. Online we have Ed D. West, I believe. And then he's just going to give us just a bit of a feedback following the task and finish group, and we'll just share some slides. And Cabinet member David Walker's on the line as well, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hopefully you could all hear me. Yeah, I think there's some slides to go through. Thank you, Claire. So this is a feedback from the outcome of your committee from last year, which set out a range of actions which we have been seeking to implement. If you go to the next slide, please, Claire, that'd be helpful. So there's a number of proposals which were set out. This related primarily to the context around developer contributions, particularly Section 106 and the SIL, and dovetail quite well, actually, I think, into the work of wider scrutiny, which I know a number of people on this I suppose member group are also on, which will be happening over the coming weeks. So quite a brief overview really on this one. So I'm not going to labour over the slides overly on this one, but it's just to give you a feel for the work programme that has come out of this. So recommendation 1 was primarily around a review of the charging schedule around the SIL. So for those of you in the room who aren't aware of that, that is effectively the how much we charge and what we charge on in terms of the types of uses of development. So there was a recommendation that we need to review that once we had adopted our local plan. Now, clearly the context behind that has changed because of the withdrawal of the local plan from the examination early on this year, but obviously we do have a new process which is underway for a preparation of a new local plan. So the proposal, and this is supported by the administration as well, is we would continue with this process of reviewing the charging schedule around the SIL in combination with preparing the local plan process. The two are complementary in nature. Obviously, the local plan is around promoting sustainable growth, and the SIL is around seeking to provide that strategic infrastructure to support that level of strategic growth. So the two work hand in hand quite well. They also share some evidence base as well. So we will be commissioning some evidence base early on next year, which will be useful to both the local plan process and the SIL processes. And importantly, I think in this context, both those processes are, whilst they go through a council process of approval, are both subject to independent examination as well. So both have that external audit, I suppose, on this one for their appropriateness on that one. So in terms of time frame, because we are aligning the charging schedule review with the work of the local plan, we are seeking those timetables are aligned as well. So as I say, the bulk of the preparation work will be next year, subject to evidence base, which we will be commissioning early on next year. I haven't put a firm date on the adoption of that, but because in terms of the local plan, as you are aware, we are waiting to hear from the government around the new plan making arrangements, so we can't put a time frame on that as yet, but we do think it will probably be towards the middle part of 28 on that one in terms of adoption of a local plan. So that's the kind of time frame we will be working with as well. We might be able to do this SIL bit slightly earlier, possibly a bit earlier than that, but again, that's subject to what comes from government around the new plan making processes, which we should be hearing about fairly shortly. That's the information. So that's the recommendation one about that one, and the work we're doing around implementing that in the work programme. If we go to the next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So recommendation 2 was a quite interesting one. This is about the link between the SIL as a developer contribution and Section 106, which is effectively a legal obligation on a developer as well. So both form part of the contributions package from a development to go towards infrastructure, but they are separate regulations around that and how they are actually used. The SIL is primarily around paying for the critical and necessary infrastructure improvements based upon the cumulative impact of a number of development, whereas Section 106 is primarily around addressing those direct impacts as a result of a specific proposal. So that's probably the best way of thinking about splitting the two up. So the work of the group basically said we need to give a bit more work around how those two are split out, the types of uses we will be looking to implement for both the SIL and Section 106, and we are looking to do that through a new developer contribution supplementary plan, which is in preparation at the moment. There has been a bit of a delay on that one, unfortunately, because there was we lost a person in the team early on this year who was leading on that. So I've had to shift a few things around, but we are now looking to take a draft of that SPD to Cabinet in March next year for approval to engage on that one, and with a view to adopting that later on in 2026. So the SPD will seek to deal with those types of uses which are most commonly necessary as part of developer contributions, and give an indication primarily actually to developers as well, actually to give them reassurance about what we will be asking for, about the potential amounts of money we will be asking for depending on the scale of that proposal. So by and large, and you'll see this because of some of the phraseology around the action there, with particular emphasis on education places, particular emphasis on items such as the local road network, but also the strategic road network as well. Very important consequences around that. Obviously, consequences around primary health care as well. Things like maintenance and expansion of GP practices. Leisure, obviously, something which has been mentioned here today in terms of the swimming provision, is an important context around that, as is contributions towards things like active travel and the delivery of programmes such as the LC WIP on that one. So broadly, those are the sort of the package of uses which we will be looking to cover in this supplementary work, and to set out the types of contribution we will be seeking for each of those uses as much as we can. There still needs to be an element of flex around that, but it's aimed at the developers as well as the communities as well, because the developers do need reassurance about what the council will be asking for, so they can feed that into their their spend profile as part of their development appraisals. So next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So along the same lines, this one, recommendation 3, quite a long one, explaining the distinction between the SIL and Section 106. So I've sought to do that already, and the outcome of that again is related to the delivery of the supplementary planning work, which I've provided the timetable for, which is March next year, for seeking to go to March next year for approval to consult with Cabinet. So I won't spend too much time on that slide. Next slide, please, Claire. Yeah, and again, this is the recommendation 6, a very specific one around healthcare. We obviously, so I think as part of the programme of the committee last year, I think you heard witnesses, I think, from the integrated care area on that one, and I think there was a specific emphasis on the need to identify sufficient mechanism through developer contributions to fund improvements and potentially new primary care provisions. That's why that was a specific recommendation from the committee, and again, as I've said, that will be addressed through the SPD, which we're working on at the moment. Next slide, please, Claire. Quite an interesting one, this one. So this was about the strategic infrastructure network. So this is that network was effectively a group of infrastructure providers which split around things like highway provision, health provision, environmental provision, and energy provision as well. So there's sort of separate groups around that, and they were being led by senior leaders in the council. So subject to some of the senior leadership alterations that we've experienced at the council over the last few months, that the work of the strategic infrastructure network hasn't really been in operation for a few months, unfortunately, on that one. However, as an action, we do have to consider very carefully, in fact, and speak regularly with infrastructure providers, and obviously we have to do that, and I have to do that as part of the preparation of the local plan. It's a very regular thing that we need to, obviously it needs to happen, so we need to understand what growth proposals we will be, I suppose, seeking to identify for areas and the implications on infrastructure capacity in those areas. So those are conversations we have normally. The strategic infrastructure network was a good mechanism to bring those infrastructure organisations in one room, normally a virtual room on that one, but it could be a real room as well. And I think, subject to suitable resources being in place, we could seek to realign that early next year as well, and that will also help the local plan process as well. So there's an alignment there about that particular process. Next slide, please, Claire. Yeah, again, this is very specific one. This is a specific recommendation. Again, at the committee, they heard a range of witnesses from infrastructure providers, and one of those was from our own education area as well. So in terms of needing to seek suitable contributions from developers to support additional primary, secondary, and special education needs education as a result of new development. So again, so it was going to be a standalone document. We felt it's best now that is wrapped up into the wider supplementary work, which I've already mentioned. So as I said, that supplementary work, which is going on at the moment and being prepared, will specifically reference the very important contributions needed around education provision, and the mechanism for seeking to achieve that as part of new development. It can be very costly, education contributions. There is a ready reckoner at the national level which we use, and it does churn out some very big numbers, and I think that's why we need to get that on the agenda quite quickly as part of this supplementary work, so we can give our developers a reassurance about how we're going to spend their money effectively on suitable mitigation for around infrastructure. So that's what we're doing with that recommendation. Next recommendation, please. Thank you. This is the last slide. This was a bit of an oddity, actually, looking back on this from my perspective. This is not something which is actually ideal within my area. So it sort of sits outside of the scope of the work on the supplementary plan. I will be having discussions with wider officers at the council about whether or not we can implement that and whether that's still relevant or not. So that was the final one of the actions that we were taking on. So as I said, that's the broad agenda of the work programme we have at the moment. But obviously I'm aware that the issue of SIL is being discussed again through the work of the Transformation and Improvement Oversight Group, which I know a few of you are members of, and I'm aware that's going to happen over the coming weeks. So I think that there's a bit of overlap there with that, and that's why I think it's helpful that the supplementary plan is actually scheduled for March next year, because I think that will allow that to take on board any of the views being expressed as part of that process as well, because there is an overlap with the two. So those are all the slides I had, but happy obviously to take any questions you have as well as a group.
So this is just for noting, because it's basically reporting back on the task and finish of the previous committee. We know there's work going to be undertaken from the transformation scrutiny around this. So I think that obviously there'll be an opportunity there, particularly to take SIL forward. Has anyone got any burning questions for now? And then we'll just be obviously noting it, so we don't need to take a vote. I think so. Dawn?
Okay. I mean, it's great to have all of these wonderful things paid for by developers, but this obviously increases costs and therefore reduces profitability. Now, the big guys can look after themselves, but this does have a massive impact on smaller developers. And in addition, it impacts on people like Star and Conovi, who have to pay these costs and are basically using taxpayer money to pay this kind of thing. So I do think that needs to be considered. If the profitability is too low from the developer's perspective, they can simply choose not to build out. And I've asked a question recently, there is nothing we can do to force them to build out. Now, we need more houses, particularly affordable ones. We've got 7,000 people on the waiting list, and I want to have quality homes built for local people. So it must be attractive to the builders to actually build. So I'd just like some assurances. What assurances can you give me that these important stakeholder groups, their perspective, will be given sufficient consideration and influence in the policies that you're putting forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's a good point. And I think, I mentioned, I suppose briefly about the shared evidence between a local plan and the review of a SIL schedule, the charging schedule, because what the SIL schedule seeks to do is to provide a outcome, which is obviously subject to independent examination, about the amount of development. So the amount of cost SIL which we could derive from certain types of development. So currently in Shropshire, we only levy SIL on open market housing development, so we don't charge for affordable dwellings on that one. It's only levied on open market housing development. The evidence base behind that is does take into account the cost of development, and it's a very complex process, and it's why we have to seek to commission that out, because it's a very specialist area, and we have to do that as both part of both the local plan process, but it's a shared evidence base with the SIL as well. So what happens as part of that process when we do commission that evidence-based work, whoever we commission to do that will directly engage with developers as well, because what they, particularly in things like very complex issues around benchmark land values and things like that, so they will gauge what is a relevant benchmark land value of a development, and then that directly leads on to how much in terms of the development appraisal around that, and how much SIL can be charged on a new development. Because the last thing we want to do, I completely agree, is to make development not a viable proposition. That's not the intention of this at all. The intention is to ensure that development pays for its appropriate impact on infrastructure, and that's that's a tried means to do it. So yeah, but I completely agree with you, and hopefully that there's some reassurance that the evidence base we provide is independently assessed and is open to engagement with agents and developers as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for this presentation. I'm one of the group who's going to be looking at SIL in the next few weeks with the task and finish. So I'm looking forward to that. I know very, very little, so excuse me for making probably just a couple of points and don't need a lot of discussion. One is the distinction between capital and revenue, which I don't think came up, and whether either of these can be used to help fund services, not obviously statutory services, but other services longer term in some way. And the second thing is about the connection, I suppose, from the community point of view between the acceptance of a development and agreeing a section 106 through the council, obviously, and agreeing the SIL take and seeing that as a benefit, which may then get eroded or diluted as time goes by, as rules get changed. Communities quite often seem to have quite long memories. So if the kind of way SIL is applied in future years doesn't bear in mind those original obligations to the community, then is there an issue? Both of those are kind of hypothetical points, and the hour is getting late.
Yeah. So I think there's something that perhaps we picked up in the task and finish group, if that's all right, Eddie, with you.
That's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, useful points. Okay, so we're just noting that item, and we'll move, which we've done. And thank you very much, Eddie, for presenting that, and good to have feedback from the previous work programme. Item 11, exclusion of the press and public, to resolve that in accordance. Have I missed something?
Well,
work programme. Sorry. It's not on here.
Well, we haven't got any spare capacity anyway.
Yeah, we are pretty tight on. So, where am I? I don't Oh, I see. Item 10, Economy, Environment Overview Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. Again, that's, as I've explained before, it's a live moving feast of a document. We're dealing with lots of issues that are coming forward from Cabinet. Things unexpectedly coming forward, like the directory today. So it's just for members to note. And likewise, if there's anything you want adding to the work programme, contact either Claire or myself, and we will certainly consider it, and we can discuss it when we review it. So
you'll see I've put waste on there provisionally, as Laura mentioned earlier. So we'll have more of a conversation about that, and then other items coming up on that as and when.
The workload is extensive for scrutiny at the minute, which is probably a good thing, but relentless if nothing else. So item 11, exclusion of the press and public. To resolve that in accordance with the provision of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 and paragraph 10.43 of the Council's Access to Information Procedure Rules, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following item. We'll just wait for it to go.
Just ask for it to stop.
Stop.
I'll let you know when it's confirmed.